Well, it is 6:30 p.m. I will call this meeting to order, and we'll start off with a roll call of members. Matt Yetton, myself, present. Susan Wood.
Present.
John Christ.
Yep.
Phil Lemeroux.
Here.
Michael Bouchard. Do we hear anything from Michael?
We did.
Yeah.
I thought we did, yep. He is dismissed. Molly McCann.
Here.
Neil MacGyver.
Present.
And Bradford Puffer.
Yo.
Perfect. Can we seat Bradford as a voting member? Bradford, would you like to be seated as a member tonight?
I would be honored to.
Make record that Bradford will be seated as a member. Full voting.
Dismissed.
Noted, thank you. All right, we'll start off with a review of the minutes from our October 16th planning board meeting.
I did notice that a Claire was spelled differently in two different instances.
You guys are
If
better.
you didn't say it, I would have.
Glad we have educators in here who are used to looking for those details.
The only thing I noticed.
What page is that on? There's page 5. Okay. Which paragraph? Which
The correct one has the I in it, right?
Yep.
So the first one I think it was did not have the I.
Noted.
Page something. It starts with public comment on this matter. Is open at 7:51. That page. Oh, page 5. Yeah.
Yep. Top.
And there's two instances in that paragraph.
On page 4, the second paragraph, which is large, but about 2/3 of the way down, there's a sentence that says, they noted that while small businesses are central to Plymouth's identity, many owners and employees cannot afford to live in town, and the price of homes and rent that small businesses are able to pay. And I think it would be appropriate to add, after the word rent, do not align with what, and then take out the word that small businesses are able to pay. So the sentence would read, they noted that, while small businesses are central to Plymouth's identity, many owners and employees cannot afford to live in town, and the price of homes and rent do not align with what small businesses are able to pay.
I would like to know for the record, you know which ones of us have worked in the classroom.
I make a motion to accept the minutes of October 16 as amended.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposition? And abstentions? All right, thank you very much. Any public comments tonight not related to business on the agenda?
Excuse me.
Joseph, communications received?
Yeah, so I do have one item in here as a communication. Of course, we did also receive a memo from Tom, which I suspect he might speak to a little bit later. But this particular communication, which you should see on the table, deals with a settlement agreement in a zoning enforcement action, which does have some relationship to the planning board. So while there's no action required on it this evening, I just wanted to make the planning board aware of it so you can take a look at it, because it will become relevant in the next few months, as one of the provisions of it does require the property owner to file a site plan review application. So again, no action required, just wanted to provide that to you folks for some background and context, and to review in advance of that time. Before we actually get a site plan review application, for people to know that there is this existing context, which has the site plan review application being filed as one of the stipulations of this agreement.
Have we seen, the site? Has it been submitted yet?
Not yet, no.
There is a deadline, though, that's part of this agreement where he's required to file it by a certain period of time.
Within 90 days from parties' full execution of this agreement? Page 2, number 3.
Yep.
So that was 10/23 this is dated, so January 23rd? All right.
Can I raise the issue of, not sure it's necessarily a communication received, but we've received the meeting schedule, which has a January 1st meeting. which is a work session, which might ordinarily be like a public hearing or something. Do we want to think about rescheduling that or anything else having to do with our January 1st meeting?
Where is that?
It's in the last page of the packet.
The
So,
digital packet? Or the,
so
it's not out on the table.
the, as you said, the first work session does fall, I was trying to bring it up under other business, but
Oh,
it's a
okay.
communication as much as anything else. I did provide in the packet a schedule for the board following the standard meeting scheduling procedures.
See it down at the bottom.
Yeah, but either way, up to the board. But that January 1st date for a work session does seem like the board may want to think about that, even though that is the first Thursday of the month, it may not be advisable to hold a meeting then, or, you know, perhaps we could bump it back to the following week, something that the board may want to discuss. Just uncovered that as I was preparing the schedule for next year.
It might get complicated because it might affect the hearing schedule. If there are hearings scheduled, or if there are hearings scheduled, but I'm going to presume that January is going to have 5 Thursdays. If the first Thursday is on the first,
Oh, yeah.
it might just be easiest instead of meeting the first and third Thursdays, that if we could meet the third and fifth Thursdays.
So keep
Yeah,
it-
and then
That would stack us up for, if we met on the 15th and 29th, then we'd be meeting
First in a row.
February 5th again, which, so we'd have back weeks of meetings from the January 29th to February.
Could
But
we not meet the 8th and the 22nd?
sometimes there are conflicts.
Oh, okay.
So the second Tuesday is usually the Energy Commission is in this space.
Tuesday or Thursday?
Sorry, the second Thursday
Okay.
is in, yeah.
I see.
Whereas, you know, it's unlikely that anybody's got anything scheduled on the 5th Thursday.
I mean, there's nothing on the calendar for that fifth Thursday. You're right, the Energy Commission has this room at 6 PM on the 8th of January. We could look at
22nd?
22nd, 29th, or, you know, the 8th at another time, unless, you know, January 1st, Town Hall is also closed. So I think that would be a challenge to pull that one, to pull off a meeting at that time, unfortunately, with it being New Year's Day. And I
We're
also-
not running into any statutory issues if we have, any time in January, right, a scheduled public hearing on zoning amendments. It's all good till early February, right?
Yeah, we would be fine as long as we noticed it properly.
Okay.
But it's true, you know, as you get further into January, you get closer and closer to that deadline. I'll give you the exact date in February. That's the last day to hold a public hearing.
So we'd have 2 Thursdays in a row between the 29th of January and the 5th of February to meet.
Unless we did the 22nd or whatever it is, which is also currently
An option.
open.
The 22nd and the 29th are both options for the January working meeting.
For the work session.
But we're also going to have a working session on February 5th, which is a week after the 29th.
The February 2nd is the last day to hold a final public hearing on a zoning amendment.
Oh,
So, something to think about. Of course, we need to notice.
And how long after the second is, third, whatever you just said, is the language due to?
The following day.
I would say let's go to for the 22nd,
Yeah.
Yeah.
just to make sure we don't run into any like weird hurdles.
Or do we want to go for the 29th, and we'll already have a meeting planned so that if we have a last minute hearing that gets shuffled to the end of the month, that would be our hearing date, the last potential meeting date where we could hold a public hearing. Because if we go,
29th is the last
if we go on the 15th and the 22nd, and then somebody brings us a last minute change, and we decide to shoehorn a hearing in, it's going to be on the 29th, and then we'll have 3 weeks in a row. We'll have 4 weeks in a row if we do that, between the 22nd, the 29th, the 15th, the 22nd, the 29th, and then February 5th for the next meeting.
We have our first public hearing this month
Yeah.
for many of these.
Or we could just say we're not going to shoehorn in any last minute
Exactly, that's
meetings.
what I'm thinking.
Okay. All right, I'm good with that.
Okay.
So what are you proposing, that we have a work meeting on the 22nd?
That's what I'm thinking.
Yep.
And then we have our business meeting as,
15.
As scheduled.
on the 15th as scheduled, okay.
We don't confuse any applicants or anything.
And, I mean, we're not strictly prohibited from doing working meeting tasks at a public hearing. It's just that we should prioritize public hearing issues first if we're gonna do that.
Certainly.
Agreed.
All right, I'm fine with those two dates. I don't see why
that
that's
seems fine to me too.
22nd?
15 and 22nd.
Yeah. Okay.
All right. Well, I hope everyone enjoys the new year. Too early? Okay. Where are we? So we had the settlement agreement. Thank you very much for providing us that. We'll look forward to that site plan review in the next 90 days from the 23rd of October. Reports of committees. We're going to have Joseph do the report.
CIP, I did not make it today. I screwed the time up, but Joseph.
No worries. There was a very, I would call it, preliminary overview CIP budget meeting today. Mostly Scott and Ann presenting what they had obtained from department heads, and there are a stack of the current status of the CIP reflecting essentially the town manager and finance director's recommendation to the committee. The committee does have another meeting scheduled next week, and then additional meeting opportunities with the department heads the weeks subsequent, over the subsequent days and weeks. So will be more meetings coming up, but today was really an overview, and as you know, as it currently stands, as proposed by department heads and the town manager and finance director for the CIP committee and budget committee as well. Though, you know, I didn't provide the budget. It is the committee has also started working on it, but you know, they're a separate committee. But the CIP falling under the sort of planning board umbrella as a planning board subcommittee. You know, I did provide that, and definitely something I think the committee will take a look at and potentially meet with department heads and start trying to see if they
We
need
have
to-
scheduled meetings with the department heads. On the 10th, we're meeting with fire, police, airport, parks, and PBTV. And on the 13th, we're meeting with highway, recycling, cemetery, and library. So those meetings have been scheduled, and they are with the department heads, and they'll be here. They're starting at 1:40 and ending about 4:10.
10th and the 13th.
The 10th and the
Monday
13th.
Thursday.
Yep, yep.
Can I make a suggestion to the CIP committee?
Sure.
Just something that I've considered over the years is that, you know, we look at, you know, under police department patrol vehicles, they've budgeted $78,000 for multiple years into the future. I'm curious, I think it would make sense for the CIP committee, because we're planning 5 years into the future, that if we have a fixed price that we would anticipate spending on an item this year, each successive year should include a 3% adder for you know, potential for inflation. And that would help, you know, so that, you know, in year one, it's going to be 103% of the current cost. In year two, it's going to be 103 times 103. But, you know, just so that, I think we're actually going to be safe, only because if we look at row 218, that's the projection. You know, that's what we're trying, the whole goal of this is line 218, to try to keep those annual totals as close as possible to each other, and it seems like they're actually declining. So if we were to add for account for inflation in this, those would probably be closer to flat. You know? So I think we're actually in pretty good place, but it makes me wonder if you know, just talking to Scott and Ann, if there's a way that we could, you know, have just an adder of 3% each year in there.
I will do that.
And I'll just make the planning board aware, since this is something we've had a couple of conversations about. This proposed CIP does include a request or recommendation for starting to fund a capital reserve account for master plan update. So of course the CIP committee will take a look at it, the select board, but if it stays as currently written, it would include asking the voters to begin putting some money into a capital reserve for the master plan rewrite, which, we have our housing master plan chapter project, which is wrapping up probably middle of next year. So after that time, if the board did want to begin thinking about this, that this being a more comprehensive look at the master plan, there would be at least something in there to start, not a full amount, because that the estimated cost of a full plan would be closer to like a 60,000 margin, just from some general quotes for big picture planning purposes. But this recommends starting that account with 20,000, potential for future additions in subsequent years. So something that this board may want to think about, and perhaps could, if there are any suggestions, can relay those back to the committee, or could be up looking at a town meeting vote as well, if it were brought that far.
Thank you, Joseph.
Good start.
I can say some words about the LRPC if you want.
Please, yeah.
So we've been meeting for a couple months now, and I can't remember if I gave an earlier update on this or not. And I did just write a update for the select board as well, so they'll be getting that on Monday. But the long and short of it is, in September we approved our next budget, and we're actually doing pretty well on our kind of fiscal outlook, despite losing all the money from the state. And despite lots of flux in federal grants and that sort of thing that are often relied upon, we're actually doing pretty well. Part of that is, I think, a lot of good planning and management on their part, and part of that is also that the LRPC has been, since its new director took over, doing a lot more basic planning work, which also brings in revenue, like circuit riding and master planning and HOP grantees and that kind of thing. So there's that. And in addition, they also decided, also in terms of budgeting, to raise the fees to the municipalities a bit, and each municipality got a different percentage based on different metrics, or the same set of metrics, but calculated out slightly differently for each town. And I think ours is set to go up, I think, about 11%, which is about the middle of the kind of whole scheme of towns in the role of towns in the LRPC. And it seemed pretty reasonable under the circumstances, given all that's going on, and just inflation and everything else that's happening. And all of that and a couple other smaller things all passed the executive board and was recommended to the full commission, and then the full commission later in September approved all of those changes. So I'm not sure if the town has been notified yet of those different costs going forward or not, but it should be going out at some point soon. Otherwise, it's worth noting, at our September commissioner meeting, we talked about legislative updates, which we've all been talking about here as well. And we got a pretty good presentation on them from Shanna Saunders, the director of the LRPC. And in our October meeting, which Tom was at, we got a presentation from OPD, the Office of Planning Development, about flood management insurance and all that goes into that, and updated maps and so on and so forth. And as you are I forgot the title.
Floodplain administrator.
Floodplain administrator, thank you. For the town of Plymouth. You were there, which is fantastic, and probably took all the requisite notes for that, I'm sure. And that's about it for LRPC.
Excellent, thank you. Appreciate that.
Economic Development Committee.
Please. Yeah.
I'm not sure we have a lot to report out. We have had our second meeting. We had it, when did we have it? When was that?
Monday?
Monday. It's been a week. So we met on Monday. We are still having discussion about strategies that the committee wants to take, what kind of emphasis we want to, or what kind of projects we want to pursue. There was some discussion about engaging with New Hampshire Co-op Extension or UNH Co-op Extension to utilize a program that they have that's called the Community Business Engagement Program. So they would take us, the committee, through the whole process of surveying and reaching out to and engaging with local businesses. And we talked about the village commercial businesses, but also home occupying businesses as people we want to start talking to start to understand the issues that they may be facing and what we as a committee can do for them. So we're still strategizing, but that's a little bit of what we talked about. Anything to add, John?
That sounds pretty good. We also talked about ways in the short term we can get involved in some of the projects that are upcoming from the planning board perspective, which also have a kind of economic development, side to them,
Yep.
like the charrette and stuff like that.
Yep.
Otherwise we just talked about strategies, how to what the board should be doing going forward, because
Yeah.
there's different things a committee like that can do.
Yeah.
Yeah,
So still in the planning and strategizing phase.
only the second meeting.
All right.
Yeah.
Conservation Commission is,
One second, before you get going on, did you have a comment about the planning and economic development?
No.
Okay. my apologies.
I was gonna offer a select board update, but I was gonna talk mostly about the Conservation Commission, so let's
Please
let
do.
Neil, let's let Neil talk.
I'm so sorry to stop you. I thought he had a
can
question
add
about that.
whatever I miss.
No,
on
that's
that.
fine, go
Let's
for
hear
it.
it, Neil. My
Okay,
sincerest
the
apologies.
Conservation Commission is focused on updating its natural resource inventory. We had a couple of expert botanists, ecologists from Moosewood Ecological, Steve Lamont and Jeff Littleton, gave us guidance on working on our inventory. And we also had a report from Laura Deming from Granite. She's a wildlife biologist, and she had state wildlife action plan data. The Conservation Commission has 7 land easements that they're required to monitor.
Excellent.
So, any more, Phil?
No, I was just going to talk about the work that when Joan presented to the select board, I was the focus on the town's responsibility of maintaining easements is kind of something that we should have some awareness of. Whenever we consider a project where they're proposing easements, it's important that the town not be held responsible for maintaining those unless we really want those. And I think that conservation, Joan mentioned they're investigating the possibility of having another land trust potentially take over the responsibility for enforcing the easements that the town is currently responsible for. So.
Is there any updates? Are they working on the natural resources inventory, or?
It's in process. I think, as
process.
Neil mentioned, it's in the works, and I think that will be a good resource for us to consider when we consider updating zoning
And the master plan.
and the master plan.
And on that note, at the select board's next meeting, they will be, after 2 public hearings, holding a vote on whether to accept the cross-access easement on the mid-state downtown parking lot, 2836 Main Street. Same update really as before, just kind of following up, because it does take 3 separate meetings to accept an easement like this. So the board has held the 2 public hearings and can consider voting on acceptance at their next meeting.
Excellent. Long time coming.
Yes,
Well, thank you for all the updates.
lots of updates.
Love it. Love the updates. All right, well, moving on to item number 7 on our agenda tonight, new business. We'll start off by revisiting 2026 zoning amendments. We'll have a conversation about whether to consider zoning amendments related to short-term rental uses and the other zoning amendment topic we'll discuss tonight will be the Fairgrounds Road Residential Overlay District Amendment. Those will be the two major items in this section. We do have a guest with us tonight to help us discuss short-term rentals. So would everyone like to start with short-term rentals?
Seems fine to me.
Sure. Perfect. Excellent. Where did we leave off on this last? Where's my memory?
Not with any resolution.
No resolution whatsoever.
I think
And
we
Tom,
were
if
kind
you
of
would like to
going
step up to the
one way.
mic, please come and join us.
Didn't we leave it as request for information about potential ways to handle this?
Yeah,
And model ordinances and stuff.
Yeah.
which we have.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Sorry, I interrupted. I think you were introducing Tom, so.
Tom Newcomb.
All know me. I don't know whether you want to make your comments first, or and then or if you want to hear from me, I can do a real quick
Please.
wish list. So, basically, right now, we've got an issue because short-term rentals are not allowed in town. And we've basically selective enforcement that we haven't been doing anything about it in hopes that we can come to a resolution. So, in the packet that I sent out, there were some bullet points as to some things to consider. I'm not necessarily advocating for all of those. I'm trying to let you know what some of the different issues are. And there were a lot of different resources online within the state about it. I happened to pick out about a half dozen or so communities around us that I thought had relevant zoning ordinances. Frankly, what I'd like to see is that we have some type of permitting that is not necessarily by right, but by special exception or by conditional use permit, so that each individual case can be reviewed to see whether it is appropriate for that location. I'd like to see an annual registration and inspection, just like a hotel would have, primarily focusing on life safety. I've stayed in some short-term rental Airbnbs in surrounding communities and appalled at the lack of life safety standards. Fire extinguishers that are tucked in the back of the cabinet underneath the sink. No working smoke detectors. I've stayed in one in town with no zoning, and had no working septic system. You had a composting toilet, and you had running water to the kitchen sink, the bathroom sink, to the bathtub, which under the DES regulations, if you have running water coming into a building, you need to have a septic system, even if you don't have a toilet connected to it. So it's guidelines like that I think we need to be looking at. Egress requirements. You'll see some of the examples that I gave you would say that you need to have egress windows in bedrooms, which is a requirement in a new home and a requirement certainly in a hotel. And we'll say if you've got a room you can't just stick a bedroom in a basement unless you have proper egress. 24/7 local property management. So whether it's the owners close by or they have somebody else. Occupancy limits that are limited. Most instances, what communities are doing is 2 people per bedroom plus an additional 2 for overnight. And then they'll have limits for daytime use. Usually it's 150% of the overnight. Trash regulations. What do you do with your trash? parking regulations in terms of off-street parking, and most importantly, compliance with rooms and meals tax. Looking at the examples that I have, I feel that I have no shame in copying other people's work. I think the OSPI ordinance is, in my opinion, excellent. But I do like some of the issues that Meredith has, requiring that there be a septic design and plot plan so that we know what we're looking at when it is approved. And I also like the paperwork that the town of Alton puts forth. So, one of the things that you see different communities do is that they'll say, okay, well, it can only be rented for X number of days of a year. First off, I think that, this is a complicated issue because there are many different types of short-term rentals. There are some people that are just renting a room in their house. There are some people that are renting their whole house while they're away. And there is one particular property owner that owns multiple units in the Tenny Mountain area and rents them out as an absentee owner. I think that having a limit of saying, well, it's only going to be so many days a year is difficult to enforce. So, frankly, from my standpoint, I think if we're going to issue a permit for somebody to do a short-term rental, let it be year-round. Or you grant the authority of whether it's going to be by special exception or conditional use permit, that board has the discretion to be able to add particular restrictions, such as a limit on the time frame. In short, that's my comments, and look for your feedback.
All right, thank you very much.
Thank you.
Well, DES has seasonal limits on certain properties.
They do have seasonal limits. Yes, that's correct. But again, we run into, it becomes an issue of monitoring it. And it's interesting because in Joseph's notes, he also brings up temporary housing units like trailers, which that's a whole nother issue, which right now I'm working with the Ashland Planning Board at coming up with a temporary residential unit bylaw for their zoning. And one of the issues that we have in Plymouth with ours is that it's difficult to enforce. How do you tell that it's only so many days that it is being used? Which is why a lot of communities that for the short-term rentals, they'll say from, say, May 1st through October 31st, or they have a set deadline. Because if you try and say, you allow it for X number of days of the year, short of somebody camping out there and checking it out every day, how do you enforce that?
Yeah, I think days enforced is, I don't like days enforced personally.
It's not
Yeah.
very realistic.
If it's, I don't even like enforcing, or I don't even like the idea of putting timelines on something, but if it does come to something where, say, a camper or something, a lot easier to be achieved with dates
Exactly.
than,
Oh, because of the nature of the facility.
right, maybe, right, so maybe just April to December 1. If it was something where you're expecting it to be like, this is going to be outside needs, I don't know, but.
Yeah.
Could I walk us back one step? So I'm kind of in a little, like a conundrum in my head. Part of me is like fully sympathetic to the fact that we have selective enforcement right now, and that's an issue. And it is a problem. The other part of me recognizes that this board has a pretty long-standing tradition from before I was on it of not passing any zoning amendments to the public before the public has a pretty long, thorough say on these sort of things. And something like short-term rentals, people have a lot of opinions about, and it's a very complicated issue. I think our hope was last year when you gave two reasons why we kind of punted it for a year, And I think a third reason is we were hoping by this point to have some more public engagement from the HOP process that might inform our conversations going forward about this. And that's been, I think, a little bit slower than some of us anticipated. And so we don't have that feedback yet. And I find it hard to really, I think we could all talk about which of these things make the most sense. And I think some towns will just go forward with what makes the most sense to the board, and that's why we're appointed here. But I also know that this particular board has a history of, and I think not a bad one, of listening to the community and what they want before, and thoroughly listening before like making a choice that people have very strong feelings about. And I don't know what the answer to that is, but I think that's worth keeping in our minds.
I think one thing to remember too is when it's a different, an approach that in these small communities, when there's a problem, people start to complain to the select board. They start going to the select board, we're having a problem with this. I think you finally get a sense of there is a problem, but people are also telling you what kind of problem it is so you know how to regulate it. You know how to put regulations on it. It seems like it's a longer process because people don't just come to meetings and say, would you think about this? They go when it's bad and they complain. But it's hard to get the public to know what they're doing or what they want. So I don't know what the answer is, but I also, people buy these properties because they want to retire to the area. They get an opportunity to buy a property, but they're not going to move here for 5 or 10 years. So this is why they rent it, to be able to pay for it. They want their taxes paid, and that's why they rent it out. In speaking with multiple people throughout the community the last couple of weeks since the last time you were here, a lot of them don't really have, they're kind of on the fence just like we are. They don't really know how they feel about it, but they don't think it's a terrible thing. It's to just allow it and see what happens. I think that's kind of the feel that I'm getting from quite a few people.
I will say my own feel is, if I'm actually going to like put my hat in the ring here and not just say, let's not go too fast.
Yeah.
And I think I said this at our last meeting as well. Like, if you have a hotel, you're going to have a management staff on premises all the time. And I kind of feel like an Airbnb or whatever short-term rental should be treated similarly, which might mean if you're in a residential district, you're owner-occupied. To have someone on premises, not just on call, like at the other end of town or something, but like on premises to say, like, I'm going to watch over and make sure everything goes right here.
I do feel that it is something that we do need to work on. When I was starting to study this more in depth earlier today, the how to do it became very daunting to me, even though we do have these really great examples. I'm not super clear how something that, like this example of the short-term rental ordinance from Ossipee, I'm not sure how that folds into a greater zoning ordinance. And so how to actually write legislation that regulates it appropriately for us is not super clear to me. Even though I do believe that we should regulate this for life and safety reasons, and not to prevent people from being able to do Airbnb, which I can completely understand, you know, in the kind of original intent of it, where you have an extra room in your home, you have a home that you're not going to live in for a little while, in which case maybe there's a difference between 1 to 30 days and then years of a lease, right? And I'm afraid I'm nervous about the dangers of not regulating it at all. But how to specifically regulate it is something that is very challenging to me in my brain.
My thinking on this is that I think, Sue, you know, the point you brought up about, you know, retirees buying homes in advance of moving into them, It's an interesting thought. I think it's more likely that, I think what's happening, what I'm seeing is that people who are buying short-term rentals are probably people who are looking for income more than anything. You know, if you're buying a home as an investment that you're planning to move into, a short-term rental is going to be a lot more intense use than a long-term rental.
True.
And I really think that the short-term rental market really is an investment strategy for people with capital to invest. And it's not that that's necessarily a bad thing, but in my mind, short-term rentals are an investment stream, and it does take away from the housing pool, and it limits affordability for young people that are trying to buy homes in the community. And I certainly, you know, ADUs are fine, you know, but I think a long-term rental in an ADU is a different thing than a short-term rental in an ADU. I support what John was saying about, you know, if we are going to consider having short-term rentals then, you know, having owner occupancy for an ADU is something we should seriously consider.
In the context of a short-term rental as opposed to necessarily, yeah.
But I mean, the fact that, you know, if there are people that have multiple properties in Tenny Mountain and they're all short-term rentals, like, they're not owner occupied. It's clearly an investment strategy.
They're not people that are living in our community.
Right.
And the funds from that are not going back into our community. They're being siphoned off elsewhere.
Yeah, and I mean, it also detracts from, you know, the number of short-term rentals in the community also detracts from the viability of other lodging. You know, we just permitted a 90-room hotel that, you know, hopefully they're gonna have enough business to stay in, you know, to stay full and be commercially viable. I mean, there are several. We have several nice inns in the area already that have nice character and availability for traditional short-term rentals. You know, I do think there is a market for short-term rentals, and people want, you know, the Airbnb model, but at the same time, I think there's more of a cost with that type of rental to our community than. I'm not sure that I see the value in it. You know, I'd rather come up with an option where we could better regulate or limit short-term rentals, even if it's with the express goal of encouraging housing affordability for long-term rentals or purchases in the community. And I don't think that's a bad thing for us to put forth to voters. You know, if we come up with some proposed legislation that makes it clear, like, this is the goal, you know, ultimately, again, it comes to the voters. Like, it's on our responsibility to get the information out and share it and discuss it with people. But again, it's not our decision. All we do is propose what we think is a good legislation and put it forth.
Neil, did you have a comment?
Yeah, I have a comment. From my experience, I've seen many cases where the management was very loose, and you know, there's not much direct contact between the owners and the people who rent the properties, and in those cases there's a lot of abuse. I'm a septic system inspector, and I've seen a lot, and yeah, the abuse that goes along with loose management should be something that we should be looking at.
So were you implying, Phil, you said something like in a half a sentence that I thought was meaningful, perhaps. I'm just trying to, like, parse it out. We're talking about housing affordability.
Mm-hmm.
Are you talking about short-term rental as a way of facilitating housing affordability by, like, supplementing someone's?
No, I'm actually thinking short-term rentals are a detriment to housing affordability.
No, I think I got that overall
Okay.
picture from what you were saying. I was wondering if it was also a way for someone, like, in an owner-occupied unit or something, to actually facilitate affordability, as opposed to someone in just taking a house fully off the market.
in the way in which it is owner occupied and that person is using it as a means, a stream of income, a supplemental
kind of
income,
like a home-
then
home
that does
occupation.
help. In the situation in which someone is an absentee landlord and siphoning money and taking that housing off of the local market, that is
There's
not
a
helpful.
different impact on the housing market.
Yes.
Yeah.
That's one of the reasons it's tricky to regulate.
Right, it takes, yeah, I don't know if it necessarily, I don't think it siphons the money, because I think in a lot of the short-term rental, like, yeah, maybe the profit of that, I get that. But I think it also is advantageous to the local economy
Because if people are coming to stay here,
because of the tourism
Sure.
aspect.
sure.
I guess
Yeah.
my point is though that I think there are other options, like even if those short-term rentals were available, I think there are other options that would still allow for the tourism. I don't know that it uniquely has to be short-term rentals to encourage that tourism.
Interesting. I'm thinking, we have a whole lot of student housing
We do.
off campus, which is already kind of like gutted and chopped up in weird ways. It could be an interesting opportunity for
It could.
like traditional like B&B style, like as per our current ordinance with B&Bs, like owner occupied, like up
Yeah.
to 4 bedrooms or whatever,
Yeah.
or even more than 4 bedrooms. Some of those houses that are large and already chopped up in weird ways. That could be an interesting conversion
It could be.
right here downtown.
Yeah.
Well, I think there's a good example of that on Pleasant Street already. There's a pretty successful B&B.
Oh, the T Rose Inn.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
That's in the midst of student housing. And you know, it would be easy for, I've been in a couple of other houses on that street that are currently student housing. I don't think it'd be impossible for those to be converted. I think, you know, what makes a B&B nice is the historic nature of an older home, but a lot of times, like, as soon as you start, like, putting up partition walls and cutting into trim to, like, get a wall to fit in there, like, you kind of lose a lot of the integrity of those nice older homes. Like, the older homes I've been in that have been converted to student housing, like, if it were me redeveloping that, I would gut it.
Yeah.
I would not even try to salvage the interior of a home that's been used as a student rental.
Well, this is what I'm
Where
thinking
you have
about.
really low prices.
It might work though, the short-term rental.
Maybe.
That's true, it might.
Or the experience section.
Yeah.
An authentic
Yeah,
student housing.
I mean, yeah.
I think that, you know, we really should seriously consider life safety standards to be paramount.
Mhm.
We shouldn't pass on that.
So there's kind of a timeline question here. Do we try to put something together and put it to public comment? Maybe that's a way to get public input. And I mean, unless we have specific outreach actions in the year that I've been on, and change that I've been on the board, it's when we put things to public comment that we get input. So maybe it'd be worthwhile.
I mean, part of me is thinking to myself, it's going to be really complicated
Yeah.
to address public input on something with this many moving parts
Yeah.
that fast.
Yeah.
So part of me is wondering, do we actually put something forth, let people vote on it? If it passes, deal with the blowback and fix it the second year round
Yeah.
based upon the blowback,
Yeah.
which there might be some.
Yeah.
Or do we try to do it right the first time, which doesn't give us the experimental first year, which might give us a lot of really interesting feedback,
True.
but makes fewer angry residents, perhaps.
Well, I mean,
which-
the bottom line is that it's just not legal to do it now.
Yeah.
So we're talking about making something actually legal.
No, I get that. And I mean, the other part I'm thinking about is there's compliance with our actual zoning ordinance, which we don't have right now on this issue.
Right.
And the fact that this has been going on for years and years, which is not an excuse to kick it off, but would one more year hurt?
We also decided at the beginning of the season that we were going to take on X number of projects. We nixed a couple of them, and I think this may have been one of them, because we do have some pretty big deals going on. And we felt that it was a lot to take more to the taxpayer, because some of these things are pretty complicated. So I think we need to respect that as well and take that into consideration.
And I say this knowing that it puts you in a pickle as the code enforcement officer.
Yeah.
Neil, did you have a comment?
Well, I was just going to say that the legislature is continuously doing statutory revision. which would be, that's what we'd be doing. You know, you make your best shot, and then after it hits its target or doesn't, then you look at it again.
I think given the fact that we did talk about this last year and we put it off, and that Tom has done a lot of work to make it easy for us to consider this year, I think it would make sense for us to put together, even if it's picking a town's model ordinance and making minor revisions to it, like, I think we should work to put forth an amendment to the voters, at least put them to the, get through
Public
the hearing.
comment.
Put them through the hearing process before we decide if we're gonna put it on the ballot.
Okay.
I'm open to that
Yeah.
as a way of getting more public feedback on something that could be worked on.
Pains me to say it in some ways, I like Durham's a little bit. And Laconia is actually what's kind of interesting.
Can I make a couple comments?
Yeah,
So just-
Oh,
No, I wanted to get,
We could all welcome it.
I wanted to
Different
give
than-
everybody the opportunity to speak and kind of see where the direction of the board was going. And a couple of things. One is I think that it's important to be proactive rather than reactive. And one thing that's interesting is I'm also on the tail end of a fire inspector course. It was very intensive. And each member of the course is class member has to do a presentation and a paper about a fire that has had an impact in changing the fire code. And the recurring theme is all of these changes are reactive. Like, there's been a major problem, there's been multiple deaths. Oh, let's do something about it. So, and I think it's important that this board take action proactively rather than reactively. And then also, I know there's comments brought up about long-term rental units versus short-term rental units. Just anecdotally, there's a property owner in town that recently renovated one of his rental units, and I asked him how things were going on getting a new tenant on it, and he said he was getting people that were looking to rent it from him long-term to rent it out short-term.
Yeah.
And so there's obviously a demand for people that are looking to basically parlay a unit for income. So it's not necessarily driven by helping me pay my taxes, which for a lot of people, absolutely it is. But there's also just a profit motive in it. And then there was discussion about accessory dwelling units and rental and short-term rental and owner occupancy. Then just to be clear, the RSA regarding accessory dwelling units as well as our zoning requires that one of the units be owner occupied. So if an ADU is to be used for short-term rental, which I personally don't feel is appropriate because the whole purpose of the accessory dwelling unit legislation is to increase affordable housing units, and short-term rentals basically just pulls it back out, but that's a whole nother issue. And then in terms of blowback, John, one thing to think about is that if we don't do anything about this, there is very likely the potential that we have to enforce the ordinance. And if you're worried about blowback about a new ordinance, imagine the blowback you're going to get when 90 to 100 people, property owners in town, get a letter saying,
Cease and desist.
yeah. So,
They know it's
so
not
there's,
right.
But they're doing it.
I know, but so that letter shouldn't shock them. They should be like, well,
well,
we got away with it for this
some people are
long.
not aware of it.
Yeah.
Some people are aware of it.
That's right.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I mean, I am constantly getting phone calls and emails from people asking me about short-term rentals of their property. And What I say is that currently Plymouth zoning does not allow it. And I say I am hoping that we put in place a zoning amendment with regulations so that we allow it and regulate it and monitor it. But as of right now, I tell people it's not allowed. It doesn't stop people from doing it.
Do long-term rentals get a yearly inspection?
They do not, which is something that, when I started here almost 3 years ago, Kevin Pierce, the fire chief, and I talked about one of our long-term goals as being a registration and inspection of rental units. And, so we're looking to kind of work up to that. Because we do get a considerable amount of complaints about rental units, and then the life safety is a major consideration. The state law requires that all rental units have working smoke detectors. And unless we can have the ability to get in there and inspect properties, we have no way of enforcing that.
So the building was inspected when it was purchased, and then it got a certificate of occupancy.
They actually don't get inspected when they're purchased.
Oh, when they're built, though.
Yeah, when it's built, but when this is, I had an owner of a 3-unit on Russell Street email me the other day looking for a copy of his certificate of occupancy. And I said, I don't think it exists, because that property has been in use as a rental for so long, and it predates zoning and inspections and permits. I said I'd be more than happy to come out and do an inspection for you and give you a certificate of occupancy, and I haven't heard from him since.
I find it really interesting, just from a perspective, a home has to meet code when it's inspected, but as soon as you have the CO, it can basically exist in that state indefinitely. And my understanding is that the only time faulty homes are being forced to issues at homes now that are safety issues, the only teeth out there is insurance companies. So your insurance company will notify you, hey, like your chimney's falling apart, and if you don't fix it, we're going to cancel your policy. Like, there are enforcement mechanisms out there, but it usually falls to your insurance company to say, hey, look, yeah, you've got a door that goes out to stairs where you used to have stairs. There's no stairs there anymore, kind of thing. But it's unfortunate, but that's really where any safety enforcement falls at this point, is insurance companies looking out for themselves and their own
It's been
liability.
done like that for years and years and years.
Yeah, there is one aspect of the building code that is retroactive and is to existing buildings. It's the only code, and that's regarding smoke and carbon monoxide detectors. And that's that if you have work done on your property that requires a building permit, with the exception of some exterior work, you're required to bring that property up to code for smoke and carbon monoxide detectors. But other than that, everything else is grandfathered.
Well, it's interesting because it's, on the one hand, I mean, you're renting to make money. It's kind of a commercial enterprise. But on the other hand, rentals are usually considered, I believe, a residential use. And so you're starting to get into like regulating different ownership models of residential use differently, as opposed to regulating commercial versus residential differently. And like a short-term rental seems much more commercial in many ways.
Even than a long-term rental.
Yes.
You've got a 12-month lease.
But I think we're getting maybe slightly off track from short-term rentals. We're talking about long-term rentals now. I wonder if we as a board should come up, A, with a list of some of the model ordinances that look good to us, but B, with a list of questions that we need to answer, like owner occupancy or not. Which zones do we consider these by right, by special exception, and maybe this is where like occupancy or non-occupancy thing comes into play. Maybe in a commercial zone, owner occupancy isn't as important, I don't know. Maybe it is, as opposed to a residential zone, but maybe like start thinking of a list of questions that we need to answer if we're gonna actually write something.
One comment, real quick comment, John, you mentioned about the differences between the occupancies.
I'm not kind of speaking extemporaneously, I don't really know the full, like.
Yeah, no, but one thing I want to point out is that if you look at the life safety code for fire safety, there's a differentiation between a residential property versus a short-term hotel property. And one of the reasons behind that is because in your own home, whether it be owned or rented, you're familiar with it. You know where your smoke detectors are. You know where your fire extinguishers are if you have them. You know how to get out of there. In a hotel or short-term rental, you don't necessarily know that. So therefore, it should be held, the short-term rental for life safety reasons should be held to the same standards as a hotel, because that's basically what it is.
For
It's a
example,
hotel in
having
someone's house.
It's not the fact that it's like, that it's almost like hotel. The point that is focused on is that the unfamiliarity
Yeah.
of egresses, smoke.
Right, from a life safety
Yeah,
standpoint,
yeah,
yes.
okay.
Being able to see the fire
Yeah.
extinguisher
The fire-
instead of
My fire extinguisher is on this corner, I know it's there.
I think we're actually on the
Instead
same
of
page
turning
on
this
this.
way.
Yes, I agree. I was just looking to clarify.
yeah. We have in our staff memo, our fact sheet, I should say, key definitions and then keys for consideration that I believe our staff people wrote us about this specifically.
Would it be helpful for Joseph and I to collaborate and put together a draft for presentation to the board?
I think it would be, if I may,
Please.
I think it would be helpful for us as a board to come up with what we think would be good practices before we kind of shift it to
Draft language.
draft language.
Okay?
Key priorities first.
Yep. In light of the tight time frame, you want to put together a,
I guess that's what I was asking for in terms of like a list of like what questions we need to answer.
Yeah,
And then start answering them,
oh, and I agree with that.
at least tentatively.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, one of my first questions, which you brought up, is do we have feelings about where short-term rentals should happen in terms of zones? I can see arguments either way. I could see it being okay to allow short-term rentals in all of the zones as long as we have, reasonable regulations that consider people's neighbors and whatnot.
Would there be different standards in different zones?
Or would there be different standards in different zones?
Which I think is what Laconia has, if I recall. Did you add that one in, Joseph? Or did,
I think that was in my packet.
that was in your packet, okay.
One starting point might simply be, as Molly suggested, we allow it in all zones under special exception. And that way we can look at each case individually.
Yeah, I think, which is an option. I think, what did Laconia do? Prohibited, so Laconia had, it's permitted in like commercial and shorefront residential, which is probably quasi-commercial anyway, industrial, airport, prohibited in all other zones except when a property is owner occupied.
That's interesting.
Which is interesting.
Pretty straightforward.
It is, yeah, that's interesting.
Which, like, I assume is there to protect the kind of character of the neighborhood, having an owner-occupied unit in a residential zone
Yes.
versus a more commercial zone where it can be treated more commercially.
Yeah, I do feel that residential zones, the owner occupancy does seem to be more important. Thinking of myself and my neighborhood and imagining my next door neighbor's house being a short-term rental and never having a neighbor ever again is kind of horrible. So, but I would have no problem if my neighbor was renting out a room in their house.
Right. I feel
That's
the
fine
same.
with
I feel
me.
the same way.
Yeah.
And I would be fine even with, well, yeah, the question of ADUs having. like,
ADU is a more complicated question.
Yeah, a detached ADU
Yes.
is a separate thing.
Yeah.
The whole issue with the ADU brings up, if you say, okay, an accessory dwelling unit can't be used for short-term rental, well, what if the owner lives in the accessory dwelling unit and uses the primary residence as as a
Yes.
short-term rental? So do you then, and it's a very complicated, you look at ADU, short-term rentals, and temporary housing units like trailers. They're all
Yurts.
interrelated because, there's a short-term rental in Plymouth that is a tent in someone's backyard.
On the other hand, what if the ADU is built to help the primary owner be able to afford their
Rent.
mortgage and taxes?
Right.
And it's helping affordability for that individual to actually have an owner-occupied home by having an extra revenue stream, and they're on premises to actually
Manage it.
manage it.
Yeah, this is what I think
Yeah,
about.
no, I agree, and I that's why I think we can get down all these various rabbit holes, and personally, I would like to see something somewhat streamlined that, even if it's just we allow it by special exception everywhere, and we don't necessarily have restrictions on ADUs, as much as I'd like to see it. My main goal right now is to focus on getting something in place that we can get life safety standards in place for these, and that we can get out of the liability of selective enforcement. So I'd rather see something that is not perfect than nothing at all.
We have two members of the public here who might have.
Are any members of the public here to speak on this issue? If so, please come up to the microphone.
We're entertaining public comment, even though this is not officially a hearing.
Hey, how's it going, everyone? My name is Brendan McDowell. I live on High Street. I guess I don't have too much to say about this topic, but I would be interested in seeing a owner occupancy requirement on short-term rentals. I do believe that having short-term rentals potentially takes, as has already been stated, housing off the market, especially for younger families. I do think that would impact our community negatively. So anyway, that's all I've got to say. It's pro owner occupancy, I guess, requirement.
All right, thank you very much.
Thank you.
Appreciate it.
I guess I feel, I don't mind attaching owner occupancy as a requirement of short-term rentals. I don't feel bad about that in all zones. I don't feel bad about requiring a special exception in all zones. And honestly, I think owner occupancy eliminates the question of whether or not it's the ADU that's being the short-term rental or the larger home, the parent home. If somebody's family, if somebody downsizes and they choose to move into the building that they built as an ADU as their primary residence and rent out the other home, like, more power to. I don't see a downside to that as long as they're there to be responsible for it.
Okay.
One question I would just, in light of some of the other items that we've talked about, just put to the board for thought. Some of the towns, some of the definitions consider short-term rentals a accessory use to a single-family dwelling. Some consider them to be a primary use, and some even consider them to be a commercial use. How we decide to classify it has actually a lot of importance, because in some cases, if it's a primary use and it's classified commercially, that could require site plan review. Whereas if it's an accessory use to a single family, that generally would not. So as you pointed, the Durham example specifically says site plan review is not required, and specifically says it is an accessory use to an owner-occupied single family, whereas some say, this is a primary use, where this is now the primary use of the property, even if it is than owner occupied. So it's a nuanced distinction, but one is taking a single family dwelling and adding an accessory use like a shed or an ADU, and one is converting your single family dwelling into a new use altogether. Could be a commercial use under certain zoning and could require site plan review, or perhaps not. So that's,
If I'm
So,
reading this, oh, go ahead.
so if we considered it an accessory use, we would not need to then include it as a distinct use on the table of uses, right? As opposed to if it were considered a primary use, it would have to be its own use on the table.
or you could also include, you would have to specifically call it out as an accessory use. Generally, if you list it as a,
Listed as,
So this also aligns with the distinction we're making between short-term rentals that take housing off the market, limiting supply, which would be a primary use, potentially, and short-term rentals that don't take housing off the market because they might be actually be making housing more affordable in some ways by subsidizing it, which would be an accessory use.
Yeah.
I
It
think,
kind of aligns with that in some ways, it seems.
yeah, because I think if we decide to put something forward that has the requirement of owner occupied, I would feel comfortable with having it fall under accessory use at that point, because we're still keeping the characteristic of some dwelling unit or dwelling possibility on that property as residential.
Unless they're running it as an Airbnb. I mean, as a B&B, not an Airbnb, as an actual B&B.
Yeah, Neil.
Is it fair to say that short-term rentals have a notoriety of disrupting residential neighborhoods?
I actually don't think so.
You don't think so?
No, I think you hear a lot about it. I do hear it, but I don't see it in fact. But like I brought this up last time, like Tom said, he's like, there's a lot of examples out there you just don't know about, pretty much.
I think it depends on the management. There are short-term rentals that are like, people go there and they party and they like trash the place. And then there are short-term rentals that are better managed that are treated much better.
And I think there's sometimes we find, or I think with like the quality or the character of the property. So if that property has 8 bedrooms, open concept, huge kitchen, and an indoor pool, that's going to have issues. Like there's going to be complaints every
How
single time.
about 19 people in a 3-bedroom house?
Well,
That's a problem.
you know,
That happens.
Which,
I don't think it does as much as you. I do not think that's as prominent. I'm not saying it doesn't happen across the country. Right? Like, yes, 19 people in a 3-bedroom house, but my experiences in this region of New Hampshire is that, like, and pretty much Plymouth and the tertiary towns is like 3-bedroom houses. Well, here's the thing: you get one with a loft, and so yeah, potentially. But I don't see like a 3-bedroom regular house like not having.
I'm just trying to get some feedback on that.
Yeah.
I read the papers.
And that's the thing. It's what we see it. We do see it there. I don't see it in my experiences.
but one thing to Neil's point, that's why if you look at a lot of the regulations that are out there for different communities, that they limit the occupancy to 2 people per bedroom, plus 2 extra, so that there could be a pull-out couch. And for the definition of bedrooms, they look at the town tax card. They'll also look at what the septic, if it's on septic. So it's got a 2-bedroom septic system, but you walk in there and it looks like there's 4 bedrooms. Septic system says 2. So it's a total of 6 people, 2 per bedroom and 2 extra.
If we have an owner-occupied aspect to it, I do think our regulations don't need to be that deep.
And
Life safety.
It's really hard to regulate, in fact, how many people are actually staying there. Whereas if you have somebody who like permanently stays there,
Right.
then
Whether it's in that house or it's the ADU, I think if it were to be owner-occupied, if we did have an owner-occupied part to it, I don't think our regulations need to be really stacked deep. Like, I'm not saying to do nothing, but I do think,
That seems easier to regulate in some ways than number of people who actually are using it.
yeah.
Are we trying to regulate this because of life safety? Is that,
Part of it.
that's the prominent reason is for life safety?
Well, I think, life safety is a major issue. We also want to make sure that there's compliance with the state meals tax law, because that also, a portion of that does come back to the
But
town.
that's not our job, but that's like,
Exactly.
that's not our job to regulate that, like.
Well, I think it is.
I actually think, I think a good
Like,
reason to
open up
regulate
your
it is-
books,
is-
that's
is-
not our job.
No, all they need to do is provide,
Number of rooms and taxes.
here's my number, here's my vendor number with the state that I'm certified. And then they acknowledge that they're filing reports.
I think in addition to.
But
the
do you
leg-
check with the IRS when people pay their income tax? Like, that's, I don't know.
Well, but that's not what we're talking, that's apples and bananas, that's completely
I
different.
mean, it's no different than us requiring, that it's a site plan have all the state and federal permits when we issue a conditional approval.
I don't think it's apples to oranges. Do you go to local businesses and check to make sure they paid their their tax with the IRS? Like,
No, but
how is that different? When you're checking to see if they're paying a government body fees that the government body is owed, that's not you. How's that different?
No, I understand where you're coming from, but I'm also using the models that other communities are using. And, it's just like if a hotel is looking for their permit, they're gonna have to show that they have registered to pay, rooms and meals tax. A restaurant that gets a permit for assembly, one of the requirements is that they show proof of registration for rooms and meals tax.
So it's not about,
That's the apples and bananas thing. Those are businesses, those
Yeah,
are restaurants,
that's
those
right.
are
It really
taking
is.
in multiple
Yeah, but
people.
a short-term rental is the same thing.
Yeah, no, that's what
It's a
I'm
hotel.
thinking. Do we do that with like restaurants and hotels now in
Yes.
Plymouth?
Yes.
They have
It's
to
about
have a
getting a
placard that they
permit.
put up.
right? It's not about, we check to make sure they're paying their taxes. It's that in order to get the permit to run the business, you have to show that you're registered with the state.
Right, we don't look for copies of their returns, just that they need to show proof that they are registered with the state. They have a number to pay it. We don't
We're not like
look at their
looking
books.
at like, hey, show me your ledger.
No,
for
no,
what-
not at all.
No,
What
they're
you
just
just-
looking for the
paid.
license number.
And it's
Make sure there's a liquor license in a bar when you.
yeah, similar to even in Massachusetts, for example, where they charge sales tax. A retail business has to show proof that they are registered with the state to collect sales taxes.
All right,
So
I
that would-
understand it more now.
That would be something that like when they fill out their paperwork to get the permit, they would put their license number, let's say,
Exactly.
on the
Right.
permit.
Yeah, and if you look at a lot of the paperwork,
Goes up.
the applications from the different towns that is supplied,
Yeah.
one is, have you registered with New Hampshire for mails and sales tax? Yes or no, and yes, provide your vendor number.
Right. Okay.
Oh, okay.
So
it's
yes.
not actually the fiscal part.
No,
like-
not at all.
No.
We're not getting into that.
Yeah.
Auditing them.
No.
That's what I felt like it, that's what
Oh,
I
no,
misunderstood it as.
no, not going there.
Thank goodness.
Wouldn't want that responsibility on the.
No,
No, no.
exactly.
Their license
We have enough to
with the
do.
state,
So
their rooms and
So,
meals.
so from my perspective,
Through the Airbnbs, they usually take care of that when you register with them.
That's true.
Yeah, Airbnb pays it.
That's-
Yeah, if you're
that's
going
all-
through an agency like Airbnb, that's one of the things they take care of.
This is what they want to know.
so you had asked if the point of regulating this is exclusively life safety, and I don't think it should be. I think the mere fact that the legislature is making statewide changes to zoning in support of housing affordability and enforcing them on municipalities is enough reason for me to say we can do this to support housing affordability in its own right. Like,
And I understand that. My point is, we're getting off into like pages and pages of regulations. My point is, let's start somewhere.
Yeah.
We're starting with life safety. That is his main concern, which is everyone's main concern. We need to start at a point instead of here, let's do this. It's too much.
Can I maybe throw out some bullet points? See if the board is agreeable and.
Can we just start with one
Absolutely, yeah, yeah.
You mentioned Durham. Do you want to start with Durham and see
I
if we
thought
can
Durham was interesting, and I thought
Laconia?
Laconia was interesting.
What do you like about Durham?
What page
as
is
Joseph
Durham
just
in the
mentioned,
packet?
it regulated it as an accessory use, and I believe it, where is Durham? I believe it also had an owner occupancy provision, which we've been talking about.
6 pages into the fact sheet.
1, 2.
Yeah, it's the second.
Oh,
to
it's in the
last
fact
page.
sheet, not in the memo? Okay.
No, that's in the original packet.
Oh, Durham, here we go, yeah. Durham, short-term rental, accessory use to an owner-occupied single-family residence containing, in addition to living accommodations for the owner and the owner's family, not more than 3 sleeping rooms for the purpose of providing to the general public for compensation, lodging with or without breakfast for less than 30 consecutive days. A short-term rental is not considered a home occupation.
That's interesting.
I think that's broad enough that we could just get rid of Airbnb, and this could cover B&Bs as well. Like, I think I think we need to think about getting rid of rooming house and B&B and just have one standard that applies to every short-term rental.
Well, every short-term non-hotel rental.
Yes.
Right, replace tourist home.
Yeah.
I don't-
Replace
I don't-
tourist home
I know, I
and
just saw it.
our existing B&B with something that's broader to incorporate both B&B, Airbnb, all of those definitions.
I just want to clarify that, so the direction you're going in with owner occupied will mean that someone that, for example, to use the example of the person that owns 2 or 3, condos at Tenny, they will no longer be, able to operate those as an absentee owner.
I would be okay with that.
Okay?
I mean, again, if what they do is choose to either rent them long-term or sell them, that puts more housing units on the market for affordable.
I'm fine with that. I just want to make sure that we're clear the direction that,
I don't feel bad about that at all. We have a shortage of
What happens if
affordable
they have
housing.
more than one in their houses in different, that they have a couple of them here in Plymouth? They've got one out on Reservoir Road and they've got one over on some other road.
So
You mean like someone owns more than one house in town?
Yeah.
And
I think we might need to further define owner occupied as the owner's principal residence as well, because I don't want somebody who has a second home in Florida and is here for half the year but votes in Florida to call this their primary residence, call that their owner occupied either. I think it needs to be defined as their principal residence, meaning where they're registered to vote. And they
So-
have to be there for over 180 days a year to do that.
So if they had another house in Plymouth, they have more than one home in Plymouth,
You
they
can
could
only
only
do it
do the one
once.
that they're living in?
I'm fine with that.
I don't like that.
Yeah. Are you okay with that?
No, I don't really like that.
You don't like that? No. Interesting. Too rigid?
I just think that the owner occupied, there's a lot of homes, like I said, there's people that have purchased homes to go into later, and
It doesn't preclude them from doing long-term rentals. It just precludes them from doing short-term rentals.
I understand that.
And they're
I just,
currently in violation of the law anyway. So we're not making it less,
Right.
we're not making it less legal, we're actually making things more legal.
I do understand your point when you said, because say someone buys, and we run 100 scenarios, but say someone does buy, say, that's where I'm retiring, right? And I still want to go up there on Memorial Day and maybe for Christmas and maybe a little bit here and there. But when I'm not going there periodically now and then, I would like to make some income off of it. So I'm going to utilize the short-term rental strategy to produce that income. So, right, like a long-term wouldn't work on that because they still might want to go up there for Thanksgiving. Or
if
I understand it. Yeah.
if short term is 1 to 30 days, is long term anywhere between 2 months and a year or longer?
long-term is, basically transient is anything less than 30 days. So
Yeah.
a
2 month
So
lease
any-
could exist.
It's a
Yeah,
hard
or,
one to
or
fill.
even just
Yeah.
The
a
nurse maybe.
month-by-month tenant at will.
Yeah,
Doesn't even have to be a 2-month lease.
could be month to month.
Yeah.
But
Yeah.
if our concern is life safety, that person that we're talking about who does want to be here like 12 days a year, let's say,
Right. So,
the reasons we're talking about the importance of owner occupancy or some kind of like management situation is not really answered by that, because they're only here 12 days a year, and otherwise it is like a free-for-all potentially. And that's the very sort of situation that we're talking about that makes, in some people's mind, at this board, it seems like that a problematic situation, that there's nobody there to look after it the rest of the year.
I do not think that's problematic.
We have a situation where next door is a short-term rental, and it is, the woman lives in Florida, and she rents it out, I think 1 to 3 or 4 days at a time. She has cleaning people that go in after every one to clean the place. They check it all out. If there's issues, they reach out to her and whatever. She has people to take care of stuff. And I will tell you, the neighbors around there, if somebody so much as takes the paper towel off the paper towel holder wrong, they're over there talking to them, or they're on the phone with her. And so the people around there basically manage it for her, and it's worked very well.
The question is, can we trust those anecdotal situations where it does work well to assume it's going to work like that everywhere else?
Well, I'm just saying it can work.
It
and
can
I
work,
think
you're
it
right.
does work
I know
like that
it does work like that
in a lot of
sometimes.
instances.
Yeah.
So that's why I think to just say overall you have to have an owner in there. Because there's a lot of times, and I think the percentage is higher than you think, that the environment controls it as well. And a lot of these people have no idea what's going on until you call them and tell them.
I don't disagree that that can be a viable model for somebody who wants an income property. My point is that I think that type of management, where it's primarily an income property, detracts from the availability of housing. And I think that this policy by itself could be to prevent housing that would otherwise be available from being used for short-term rentals. And I don't feel bad about that.
So perhaps,
I mean, from my perspective, it's an issue of economic justice, where, like, if that's the policy of the town, and I don't see that as a bad thing. I really don't.
What do you mean by economic justice?
Because taxes are still getting paid, things are getting.
What's that?
I think probably you're referring to like keeping the business in the community, keeping the people, the jobs, keeping people in the community for the housing piece of it.
Yeah, I mean, just ensuring. I mean, just in support of housing affordability. Just that there's a limit on how much housing is currently available, and if 10% of our housing units are held for short-term rentals, it's 10% of homes that aren't available for long-term rental or sale by people who want to live in the community long-term.
could we do, I actually prefer what we've been talking about as opposed to making an exception here. Could we say in non-residential neighborhoods, or zoning districts, I should say, not just neighborhoods, zoning districts, you can make a case for a non-owner occupied unit by special exception if you meet certain criteria of management
Or by site plan.
or site plan.
I mean, I think we could have the allowance for non-owner occupied short-term rentals require a site plan, have it be a commercial use.
But what if it's a case like what Sue described, where there is sometimes an owner occupancy?
If it's not the primary residence, it's a
Yeah.
commercial use. Site plan required. That would be a proposal that would
Yeah.
address that issue.
I mean, I do think it makes sense to kind of tailor.
It doesn't prohibit it. It just would make it more rigorous, I guess.
I do think it makes sense to tailor the owner occupancy to zone to a degree. I think in the residential zones, owner occupancy makes a lot of sense. In the non-residential zones, I could see it making sense for there to be some flexibility in terms of owner occupancy with other sorts of standards, such as special exception.
I have two thoughts about this. On the one hand, I think if you're running what is essentially a business, running a short-term rental, having someone on site to run your business is a good thing, whether it be management company or the owner.
Yeah,
So that's part of it for me.
right.
The other part is if you're not in a residential zone, You could say the fact that you might like piss off your neighbor
Yeah.
is less of an issue.
Yeah, I mean, our agricultural zone has some heavy residential uses.
It does, though, yeah.
But if you have an approved site plan that, you know,
Yeah.
they had an opportunity to comment on when it was approved, then they should be able to operate that as a short-term rental indefinitely, right?
I've seen a trend where large-scale investors are buying up myriads of
Yes.
properties
That is my main
just to
concern.
rent out. And to me,
Right.
that would be a threat to our community.
I agree.
Yeah.
Kind of like the college properties.
Yeah.
That's what sort of tears me is that like I don't like that idea, you know, of like pure commercial,
Yeah.
a large company. You know, I don't like that idea. But
Deep
what
pockets.
she's talking about, you're talking about, Sue. I like that idea, but I don't know how to marry them both.
Yeah.
Yeah,
So,
there's
so
a-
the problem with that is what happens when Sue's neighbor, whoever does that, decides, hey, I want to sell this, and I've been doing this indefinitely, and here's this, these people with money want to buy it, and they're the investors, and that just becomes part of their portfolio of properties. Like,
Yeah.
Right.
like
But that's, you can't control who buys and sells
you
property.
can, but you can control the
that.
Which
use.
is why you can control the use. So when I made that as like, let's put that forward, that's not my ideal solution. I was just trying to figure out a way of like, somehow like, making a compromise.
Yeah.
That's not my ideal solution.
I'm actually, to Neil's point, I'm very concerned about the increasing amount of economic spread and the fact that, you know, I think,
Market consolidation of housing.
yeah, very quickly like there's not a whole lot of things that people with money can invest in, and pretty soon they're going to own all the real estate, and unless you can hold tight to what you have, like regulation is going to be one of the few tools that will keep housing affordable for people in communities.
And this hasn't really hit
And,
Plymouth
and I
yet.
don't mind wielding it now.
It hasn't really hit Plymouth yet, but the Tom's point
I
of
really don't.
being
It's out
proactive,
there.
like this is an opportunity to be proactive.
Yeah, it is.
Can I ask one question and then we'll make a comment and then a clarifying question? I mean, so the comment would be to Sue's point, well, first off, if you're requiring that it be owner occupied and someone else comes in, then that is you're gonna have that same requirement
Yep.
on that. But also, if we're gonna be doing an annual registration, for example, but if we're owner occupied, it sounds like maybe we could lessen the requirements on that. But similar to what we do with accessory dwelling units now, is we require just an annual certification of, do you actually live in one of those properties? So the subsequent owner would be held to those same standards, and I think that the permit, just as with an accessory dwelling unit, is issued subject to maintaining it as your primary residence. Clarifying question I had is, we've talked about residential and we've talked about commercial. But the ag zone again falls in the middle there. So, which has a lot of residential. Look at, just say, Tenny Mountain, which is technically in the ag zone, but is very residential, has a lot of short-term rentals. So I guess, would you say, when you talk about applying it to residential zoning districts, would you want to include the ag zone in that?
That's if we actually split.
Yeah.
Part of me is, I'm going back to the Durham definition again and saying this is pretty close to something I'd be comfortable with.
I try to keep
Where
it
it
down to
doesn't-
safety though. Maybe it's a safety thing for people that were, I think it seems to me this thing has really like gotten so it's kabam, huge. And I think we have a lot of good thoughts we just put into it and stuff. But to make it simple for the people, just to keep it like you want for safety reasons, if this is something we could do just to have it for now, so it's safety and not get involved, because I'm seeing this thing going really everywhere. And I think there's a lot of good things, but I think basically what you want is for the safety, whatever, it's just, I don't know. But something I think we need to come up with a conclusion of, this is how we're gonna do it for now and see
Yeah.
it down the road.
Yeah.
And then ask the people what they want, but this is gonna be man, like, I don't know, they
Again,
have the
'cause
right to
we-
come and see what's going on there, if it's safe for people to be there. You
Yeah.
know, just something really simple like that, I think.
I think the safest option, and the option that covers Phil's point about economic justice, is something similar to what Durham has.
I like Durham's, honestly. Durham's does not address whether or not an accessory dwelling unit can be used. I don't see how, if they address the use of an accessory dwelling unit as
Yeah.
for short-term rental, but I think,
Not necessarily word for word, but I think it's a pretty good starting place.
I think if we, I think it's a good starting place as well.
I think in terms of we're making something actually legally more available, it's also a good place to start, and I think is something that can and probably should and will need to be worked on.
Yeah.
Again.
We could make it more flexible in the future, who knows?
I think we could easily take this first sentence of Durham's to say an accessory, short-term rental is an accessory use to owner-occupied single-family residence, and insert or ADU. Single-family residence or ADU containing, in addition to living accommodations for the owner and the owner's family, not more than 3 sleeping rooms. I think we could easily include ADU in that.
I have a question. If you have, like, say a fourplex, and one of those is owner occupied, does it need to be single family or?
Or does
This
an owner,
says single-family residence.
That's what this one says. I was just kind of curious though, if you have like a fourplex, and
Well, yeah, if we're including ADUs, then what if
I guess
it's,
that- I guess-
what if it's a duplex?
I guess
If you allow an ADU
Yeah.
to be used for an accessory dwelling, what if you have a single family or a two-family and
Yeah,
you want to
that's-
use one of the units?
Well, I guess
I think
a duplex-
limiting the single family
I guess a
is too
duplex
limited.
or an ADU, you might actually just be subsidizing your own residence.
And that's
Once you
fine.
talk about fourplexes and stuff, you're actually talking about running a business.
Yeah.
So it might not be going to go there then.
But if it
And
is,
you're taking housing off the market then.
but if it is owner occupied, I think it does change the scenario a little bit.
It does change the scenario a little
If
bit.
it's owner occupied.
In terms of life safety, it definitely changes the scenario.
In control.
In terms of the affordability issues of housing and housing supply, you are taking 3 units off the market.
Oh, I'm sorry, I misunderstood. So you're saying,
All 3 units.
or all 3, I thought you meant 1 unit for some reason.
No, I'm saying, like, what if you owned like a fourplex?
Or if it was, or a sixplex. We
Right.
allow
Yeah.
up to 6 buildings.
So maybe we shouldn't allow that.
Or you could limit it to 1 unit per parcel.
Yeah.
One piece to keep in mind with that larger example is that the hotel definition, if unchanged, says basically is a building containing 4 or more apartments or living accommodations for 10 or more persons who have their residence elsewhere. So
Or
if
a
it
hotel.
has 4 units or 10 or more persons worth of living accommodations under current
So we're
zoning,
covered
it's a
by that.
hotel,
Okay.
So we
which
could.
is only allowed.
So if we allowed primary residence, so somebody could do like primary residence with rooms in it and an ADU, and that would still fall under that 4 units or less, right?
So
Maybe?
maybe, I'm not sure. Can I ask Joseph? What information do you need from us to start crafting something? It sounds like we're moving towards, I'm not sure a consensus, but at least some sense of like commonality.
How about if we go through the 3rd page of Joseph's fact sheet? There are keys for consideration of regulations.
On the
Can we
back.
run through them as a board and
Sure.
discuss these? Would that, because that would give you answers to a lot of the things you're questioning, right?
Yep.
So I think we should get rid of the tourist home definition. I think we should get rid of the regular bed and breakfast definition and simply just go to a single definition for
Short-term rentals.
Short-term rentals.
I don't know. I think we should keep the bed and breakfast.
What does that allow that a short-term rental wouldn't, I guess? I don't
I'm
have
not
it
sure
in front of
much,
me.
except that it's a traditional
The one that-
business type that people recognize.
The short-term rental definition we were considering might be different.
Okay.
Let me find it.
While we're on the B&B definition, I don't like the one in
In the TMOD,
in the TMOD.
I don't like it
Which
either.
doesn't match what I understand the B&B to be.
Okay.
correct.
Yeah,
That would be,
It's just a small hotel.
that would be a good thing to keep in mind for the TMOD hearing, because we
Yes.
can make changes at that time.
I think we should.
If you can keep track of that, that's
I think we should.
Remember that.
I do think we should update the definition of the TMOD to align with this, so that we don't have different standards in different
Yeah.
zones.
So is a bed and breakfast owner in trouble if they don't serve a meal? As how this reads, to a patron in which the only meal served is breakfast.
I've never been. Oh, they might be in trouble if they serve another meal.
So
Oh, and that's what. Yeah, if they serve lunch or dinner.
I've never been to
Not
a bed and
tea.
breakfast that did
regulate
not
that?
serve breakfast.
I'll give you one
breakfast
better.
anytime.
Bed and breakfasts are not allowed in Plymouth. They are defined in zoning and not listed in the.
Oh, you
table.
mentioned that in your.
Oh yeah,
your
so
thing here, yeah.
crazy.
We could scratch it from the definitions.
It's currently not in use for.
It's not a permitted use anywhere.
In any district. So, whereas
Interesting.
tourist-
Which may have been an oversight.
So we could get
but-
rid of it then.
We can get rid of it then.
As long as,
not there,
as long
so
as
we
those
can get rid of
uses are allowed
It's
in the proposed.
the definition is in the ordinance, but the use is not in the table.
Well, we should see to it that a traditional B&B, like the T Rose Inn, would fit within something that's permitted, like a short-term rental
Yeah.
Yes.
ordinance.
Yes.
But if
Yes.
if they have 5 rooms, it wouldn't fit under.
No, it would not fit under the current
This
one, no.
proposed definition.
I don't think they do, but,
But they're also grandfathered.
yeah,
All right, tourist home definition removed,
yeah.
Yeah.
And potentially B&B removed, because it's
and
not.
B&B definition removed because it's only a definition.
So the second question, should transient rental uses be required to be owner occupied in some or all cases? I believe we can require them to be owner occupied, and if they're not owner occupied, we should require a site plan.
Okay, so there would be an avenue.
Yes.
For someone to
Have a,
say, listen, I'm buying this house, to come with a site plan. Okay.
In all districts?
in
I don't
all
think we've drawn
districts
to districts.
where those commercial uses are allowed.
Are allowed.
So, yeah, so would it be the same district as hotel under the same treatment, or would it be a different set of permitted uses?
I do think it'd be
So
useful to
we'd
think
be-
about where this can
We'd
be
kind of be
permitted.
creating a new use that we'd have to put into the table of uses
Yes.
then, right?
I can think
Yes.
of one of our most popular Airbnbs in town being in a residential.
Should we sort of prepare the document roughly like we're doing right now? And reconvene on it, and then, or
Give ourselves time to think.
and then say,
Yes.
does this fit in every zone?
Yes.
Or are there some zones where like,
Fair enough.
we need to tweak or we need to change something, remove something?
Phil, can you repeat what you said about site plan review? You
So
either owner occupant.
the question asks,
Or
should
site plan.
transient rental uses be required to be owner occupied in some or all cases? And my proposal is that if they're not owner occupied, they would require a site plan.
And our current site plan review regulations, which you could always change, of course, because that's easy to change, is there a threshold for review that this would not meet?
What a good question that you asked, because that's actually a key question that I have in my later discussion of the scope of review section of the
Okay.
site plan review regulations. But it is very difficult to apply currently in some specific instances. So, but a change in use, when it is non-residential or multifamily, so not a single or two family, or single family and ADU, or single family, or accessory use to a single family. So basically, 3 or more unit multifamily, or any kind of non-residential use, commercial, industrial, et cetera,
And
except.
as long as we define non-owner occupied,
As commercial.
That's not an accessory
That would be
use.
the
Fit in
key.
there.
And then there's a couple of other questions that I think do need to be maybe clarified in there, because right now there's an exemption when you meet, even if you're doing a change of use, when you meet a certain 4 criteria. And I think the board may want to look at those criteria a little more closely as far as what are we really intending these site plan regs to apply to, that they may or may not be applying?
And that's in general, not even just for this.
That's actually a totally seperate piece.
So add that to our agenda.
So we try to get this basic so we can get like, I'm just saying, it sounds like we keep going off track here, like.
We're getting to a
Safety
really,
went to,
I think we're getting to a really good place actually, where
We're making progress.
this,
We are.
yeah, where this kind of question of owner
all
occupancy,
night.
if the building or the residence is owner occupied, then it's an accessory use. If it's not owner occupied, then it's a commercial use.
Yes.
It makes
Requires
complete
site plan
sense,
review.
Yeah.
which could trigger site plan review, which triggers permitting as well, and
As long as our thresholds in the site plan review documents. are
yes.
correct.
So that makes a lot of sense to me
As far as starting things off.
as a sort of
ball
starting
rolling, ball
things
rolling.
off. However,
However,
So we just answered the
No.
fifth. Should we
You
just
can put
answer?
PS, we're gonna do it later
sorry,
on.
Brad.
We're gonna-
Sorry, Brad.
I'm saying things gonna change maybe.
Can I
So
interject a comment?
Sorry.
Love to.
Go ahead.
No, just when we talk about owner occupancy, I just want to be careful that, because we might have a situation where it's a two-family or a single-family with an ADU. So I think we want to define in this instance that owner occupied is not necessarily to that unit, but that I think, language such as that
One of the units
that
must
the
be owned.
property is the primary residence of one of the owners. So,
thank you for
so
clarifying.
that
yes.
way, it doesn't necessarily have to be either unit, but also it's owner occupied, we want to specify that it's their primary residence.
I agree that it
Yeah.
should be.
Yeah, because they could live in either one.
And I think,
Yeah.
I mean, I would presume that as an enforcement officer, you would have the ability to check certain things like, is your vehicle registered here? Or
Just
are
like
you
we do with
registered to vote
accessory
here?
dwelling units.
Is that how you define primary residence?
Yes, so for accessory dwelling units, they need to show that it is their primary residence by showing either voter registration, vehicle registration, or child in school, or driver's license.
However, I guess it gets to thinking about the table of use and zones. So a short-term rental commercial use of a home in single-family residential does not make sense to me.
So in single family, interesting.
You're saying only allowed where commercial uses are allowed.
I think if it's going to be a commercial use, then we should tailor it to where we're comfortable with that type of commercial use to be allowed. I think
So
it's
you're
probably
suggesting that in some zones, the only option is that it must be owner occupied, but
Correct.
there will be zones where non-owner occupied site plan required would be.
Yes.
And I'm gonna say that.
perhaps the agricultural
we-
zone. Would be
And we
good.
can write this, put it to a couple of public hearings, and after the first public hearing, there might be interest in this and a few bites from the public.
Yeah,
And we might hear some arguments that might
change.
cause us to tweak it.
Yes.
But as a starting point, sure.
Okay.
One option could be also, could you have two separate uses? One use being an owner-occupied short-term rental, and in the table of uses, you have it permitted in, say.
In the zones where it's permitted.
Yeah, the zones, and then you have non-owner occupied short-term rental, subject to site plan review, which is
No,
Permitted in
only
other-
permitted in other
limited
districts.
number of zones or
Right.
something, yeah.
And so it sounds like we have a place to go forward from the board, and we could leave it to our professional code writers to try to translate this into.
I'm happy stopping here if this is where we want to stop.
I think we can put our ideas together for the next time this is on the agenda.
Is there anything else on this list we have to answer?
Oh, yeah.
So here's one.
RVs and
Should a
stuff, or-
detached transient rental be allowed to be, in some cases, to be a backyard cabin? Or should it be a permitted ADU? Should we limit it to permitted ADUs so that they have to comply with code? I mean, if we're worried about life safety, I would think that
Should be a code compliant structure for a dwelling.
Well, I agree with John, and I think that's where Phil's going, is that
I'm
you-
proposing the question, but I'm looking for that answer.
Yeah, no, but I think it's one of the things where you've got DES requirements in terms of, septic or versus sewerage. And then you have, what's considered the basic units of a dwelling unit, which is sanitation, cooking facilities. So, and, or do you want to say, you can rent out a tent in someone's backyard?
I mean, like, you're getting into glamping
I was just gonna say
territory,
the
which
same
feels
thing,
like a
yeah.
different business.
Glamping is a whole other story.
Yeah.
And there are like short-term rental, like
Glamping.
tenting options.
Yeah.
But that might be a separate conversation that we're not having right now.
Yes. That's how I feel about it.
Yeah, I don't think that needs to be under this.
And we may have different feelings about that, but that feels like a different conversation. And I think for this particular thing we're talking about, in my opinion, I think it sounds like we're all on the same page. That we go with actual, like, permittable structures.
And I think what might be good is to have language in there that says that because we do have language in zoning that talks about temporary housing units such as RVs. And I think that maybe what we have in this language is that temporary housing units such as RVs could not be used as
Short-term
rentals.
I'm okay with that.
In the language, I can't quite remember, the language about RVs and stuff like that they're specifically to be used during construction and such, or?
Well, we have 120, or it can be used during 120 days during a year, which I'd love to come back next year with a revision to that.
Somebody's building a house. Sometimes somebody puts one up and they want to live in it for a year or
Right,
two while
yeah.
they build a house.
I
Like,
think-
Yeah.
So there
we
is
can
the
extend that, right?
option of being able to use temporary housing for up to 120 days for non-paying guests, or with Board of Selectmen approval, you can stay there for up to a year temporarily while you have a home under construction.
But it's subject to having an active building permit on the property.
Correct. And that is also
That would be fine.
requires actual Board of Selectmen approval.
Which is fine.
All right. Do we have anything else to add for this document tonight before we
I'm okay moving on.
start wrapping it up at this
Yeah.
point?
Feels good
Unless
to wrap
Joseph
that up.
has questions for us. I think, I was trying to get us through the questions that he posed
Yes.
us to think about.
Are there any
but
other ones on
I'm-
there
I'm
that-
comfortable moving forward.
You're gonna have to already tweak the TMOD. That's I think the last
I think
one.
we've
Yeah.
gone through all the other ones
Yeah.
in our conversation already.
I'm getting the sense that there's not consensus here, and I'm okay with that. I'm hoping that we can all get something together, at least to think about, and then if we want to talk about it at the next meeting, like, I understand that other people are going to have other ideas, but I hope that we can come up with something together where we can all feel good about putting it forth to voters as a viable option to improve the situation from what we have now.
So
Members of the public, if you're listening, come talk to us.
They're all
Please.
gone to bed.
Please.
And so just to kind of recap my sense of this conversation, we're looking at two new uses in the use table. This conceptual draft amendment, two new uses in the use table. One which is short-term rental owner occupied, one which is short-term rental non-owner occupied. They have separate definitions. They replace the tourist home definition and the bed and breakfast definition, which we will keep in mind for the TMOD discussion later on. We also will have some kind of performance standard section, is that correct, which says it must be a permitted dwelling unit, and anything else. So in that, if we're thinking of this like accessory dwelling units, right, they're in the table of uses, they also have a section for.
It must be a permitted dwelling unit or within a permitted dwelling unit. Doesn't necessarily need to
Right.
be the permitted dwelling unit.
And I think we should say not more than 3 units on a parcel, because if it's 4 or more, it becomes hotel. But if you could have like a guest room in your house that's a short-term rental, and you could have an ADU that's outside your house that's a short-term rental. And I think those, like if it's owner occupied, I could see both of those being options, but.
Yep.
Or would you guys rather, do you think that it would be better to limit it to 1, either internal or external?
I'm comfortable with it being the limit up to 4.
To 3?
3, yeah.
We can always change it next time.
So I would just ask too, would that apply only if the existing residential building is permitted in the underlying zoning? So if we have a single-family residential district and someone wanted to build a single family with 3 short-term rentals, would that be permitted as you see it, or no?
I don't
Would
think
that-
so.
So
No.
would we tie it specifically to
Existing.
the number of units can't exceed what's permitted in the zoning or
Yes.
something?
Yeah, so like if in the single family, you can have a primary residence and an ADU, that's all you could have. Like, this does not give you authority to build more houses than the underlying zoning allows.
Yes.
Or more structures.
We don't want to undermine that.
But you could still in theory have like a first floor master that is independent and rented out separately and an ADU that you could do that in.
I wouldn't mind undermining single-family zoning, but that's a whole other conversation.
You wouldn't mind what?
Undermining single-family zoning, that's a whole other conversation.
Can't we keep all this simple?
Pin in that.
Trying
I
to.
appreciate
Simple's
you a
good.
lot
you
right
know?
now.
Simple's good. I think if we get
I
too blown
agree.
out, we get
agree.
too politician, this kind of stuff.
I don't know if we need to limit, so if they're not, if it's not owner occupied, and we're gonna switch it into a commercial use. I still think it should be limited, or it still should be allowed in all zones, because they are coming in through site plan review. Like I know the word commercial is there, and I know they're running it, but it's still like a dwelling unit. Like, how can we, and they're still coming in through site plan review.
I'm just gonna say that on a next round of revisions is a really easy change to make once we have the basic wording in place. And that might be,
Okay.
to Brad's point, like, maybe just,
Just don't forget it.
yeah, don't forget to,
I think we can, if, once we have some definitions and a working proposal, I think we could easily discuss what zones
Yeah.
next time.
yeah. That's just a chart, like,
Yeah.
add or remove an X or.
So we're gonna add 2 uses, and then we're gonna have to add to that, for all the zones, we're gonna have to add those 2 uses and say where it's permitted or where it's not permitted,
Right. Or permitted by special exception.
right? Well, they're all gonna be special exception, right?
No,
No, not if it's
Not
owner
if it's site
occupied.
plan.
Just permitted?
not if it's site plan.
Oh, well, right, if it's a site plan, okay.
Then it comes to us, as opposed to the zoning board.
Does it need to be by special exception if it's owner occupied single family? That's, I don't think there's, I think it should either be a conditional use permit or a special exception. The difference being we would do the conditional use permit, or the zoning board would do the special exception.
Can we talk about it next time?
Yeah, can we think about it? I'm dreaming about
I
it.
think these are good, detailed questions. I
Tom,
would like
didn't
to-
you advocate that it should be either a conditional use or a special exception?
Well, yes,
We should add this next time.
yeah, and just real quick, I would just say, but if it's gonna be owner occupied, it's less of a concern.
Yeah.
Okay.
And I would throw out there special exception, no offense to this board, but this board deals more with policy and big picture things, whereas the ZBA deals with the specifics of individual projects and the application of zoning. So, but I'm less concerned with that if it's owner occupied.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Yeah, thank you.
Appreciate it.
Is
All
that a
right,
wrap?
Good work.
that's a wrap
Good work, you all.
for
You want a
the
motion?
first thing on our.
I appreciate you keeping tabs on our agenda. This was a big one, I don't,
It was huge.
yeah.
Do you guys want to go ahead with the Fairgrounds Road residential overlay? Sure. Or not? No. So talking about, get your papers organized. We're off of short-term rentals for right now. Moving on to the Fairgrounds Road residential overlay district amendment. Where are we?
I want to say thank you, Joseph, for the before and after table.
Oh, and thanks
Where's
to Matt
that?
for the suggestion of that, because that was Matt's suggestion
Yeah.
to make that.
Wait, where did that go?
My eyes really read.
Where's the
well
before and
that
after,
way.
is that in the packet?
Actually, it's a,
Yep, zoning amendment comparison. I
didn't get a packet.
Overlay.
I think those came up after I grabbed my stuff. Anybody else think that?
looking at it like this, you're looking at like, so.
It's the blue one.
If you're in the ag zone and you want like an extra unit or whatever, right? you need 2,500 square feet. And yet in the overlay, you need 5,000.
Oh my god, where is this?
So your minimum lot size
And-
for
and-
the
and-
first unit goes down.
And that does go down, and the whole point was just to echo and mirror the single-family residential. But do we have to do that?
That's not.
Sorry.
I think it's,
Yeah, what's the cover of that page look like?
So here, want me to screen share? You can helpful get it on TV.
What's the very top?
he said it was in the
I'm trying to actually figure it out.
Is that what you want right there?
No, we're,
packet.
I think it's
What
this
we're
one.
gonna be doing, but
Is it
there's
this one?
something,
That's the table.
Sign?
And the table.
it's in the, I think it's
I
in
don't
the
even know,
original
I printed this
packet.
out and,
You printed it out.
yeah,
So it's in the digital packet.
yes.
Okay.
Site plan reviews?
No, it's
Thank you, Joseph.
Here you go.
Printer
packet
ink
that
costs
you
so
got
much
in the
money
print
now.
by
It
email.
does.
Costs
bring
more
that?
than the printer.
That's the
It's in
business
there.
model.
Jeez.
It in fact costs more than vanilla, it costs more than many things like per ounce. It's like
What's that?
printer ink.
Oh, yeah.
The price per
They give
like
you
ounce.
less too.
Yep. It's a racket.
Will you go down, please, Joseph, to see the whole table? Thank you.
So there's this
This is-
one, and then there's the next one, which has like some of the square footage and stuff, which
Lot size and
lot sizes and stuff.
Uh,
Like it's nice just to echo the single family, and it keeps it simple. But I'm also looking like if we're allowing higher density housing, why not higher density multifamily housing? Or why not 2,500 feet for an extra unit rather than 5,000 like we have in the ag zone? Even though we start with a smaller first lot, I don't know. Or am I just overthinking this? That's what Brad's gonna tell
That
me.
does stick out to me, that the additional lot area required for each unit over one in single family in the fraud, like, but, I mean, if we have,
But you're starting with a much smaller lot to begin with.
right, but there's a crossover point there too.
Yeah.
there is. There always is with these. When you
Yeah.
when you have your first be different from each subsequent one, there's definitely always a point at
Yep.
which you're essentially approaching the maximum allowable, which
Right.
is based on the number of.
I don't think it's bad as it
additional
is.
square footage.
I'm okay moving forward with it. I mean, we've worked on this for a while.
I mean, I'm okay moving forward as it is. It's the table these two tables though would really do raise some questions, which are kind of interesting. On the other hand, I don't see that we have to change anything necessarily. And if we pass it and we decide that something like the 5,000 needs to be lowered, we can always tweak it later and have another zoning amendment another year. I don't know. I feel like I'm the only one talking at this point.
I can't find the paperwork.
It's a lot to think about, but I appreciate the summaries, and I think we've done this enough now that I generally feel okay with it where we are. Like, I would be comfortable moving this to hearing where we are without change.
As would I. Did we move this to the hearing or not yet?
We have not made any votes.
We have
on
not
this
made
yet.
this one, it was only the other ones last time, okay.
Mhm.
Can I ask how others feel about moving this forward? It basically allows for more single-family density along water and sewer in the overlay, which is not a huge gain, but it's a gain. Getting us down to basically a quarter acre rather than a full acre or actually it's a half acre in ag. What
It gets you to a quarter acre for water and sewer, and a half acre essentially for water or sewer.
No, I was actually just thinking what it was previously in ag for water and sewer.
Oh, in ag today with water and sewer is 40,000
It
square.
is still
That's right, it's right
40,000.
there.
Yeah, no, I'm looking at it, I'm seeing it. So it actually, it is a real gain.
It is,
Um,
it is.
Anybody want to
Unless
tweak
you're
it
putting
further
multiple
before we?
properties on.
Yeah.
If you're putting multiple properties on, it might be better to do the ag zone, underlying ag zone. But
And you can still do that.
flexibility, I think the goal of this is flexibility, and I don't see this as being a detriment if somebody goes either way or the other.
I don't think any wording needs to be changed. The only place in my mind is that I'm like, is it needed? Is it not needed? And it goes sort of back to the.
And I think, honestly, we've done the hard part, let's put it to voters. I mean, the only downside is, are we gonna be overtaxing voters with too many zoning amendments?
Yeah, I mean, I don't think there's really a downside to passing this, though. Like,
I don't either.
I'm not sure it's gonna have a huge impact, but like, it could be helpful to some people, and it's just another tool in the belt.
How many zoning amendments did we pass last March? Was it 7 or 8?
It was 7 or 8 the year before that, I think. And last
It was like
year,
at least 6 last year.
I forgot.
6.
Sandwich passed 13 last year.
Holy moly.
Lucky number.
I think that was was that last year? Why doesn't that matter? And
Oh,
yeah,
that's a lot for Sandwich.
That's a
So,
lot.
I know
I-
Sandwich.
I'm reminded
That's a tough
that, like,
town.
where my parents live, they have a town supervisor, and like, and changes to zoning, like, this board would make changes to zoning without any vote of the public. So like, we're just putting things together where, yeah, like, other states handle zoning a lot differently than we do. Like, you elect,
Councils.
you elect your representative government, and they decide what's gonna happen, and it happens, like.
or even cities
So
within the state.
we're
Yes.
keep in mind, we are putting together our best guesses at what we think the public could support, and we're putting it to the voters who are gonna have the ultimate decision.
And they can say yes or no.
Yep.
If they don't like it, they can say no.
This is fundamental, this is about as fundamental as democracy can be.
If we do move this to a public hearing, do we want to stick it with all the other ones? Which is at a business meeting, I believe, at this point, which might not be a good idea. Or do we want to put it to the next actual work session in December?
Why don't we figure, I think we should do the next work session.
So can I make a motion? Well, I know I can.
So the
Anybody
down,
opposed to that?
if we do it in our work session in December, our second one is gonna be at our work session in January, which is now gonna be on the 22nd.
Yep.
Okay.
And we've been thinking about this for like, how many
Yeah,
years?
But we're close, we need to get these going, like, if
You too.
we're,
So I make a motion that we move the Fairgrounds Road Residential Overlay District to public hearing for consideration as a zoning amendment on our work session in December, which is December, some single digit number.
4.
4, thank you.
second.
Go 4.
Oh my God.
You can't fourth the motion. You have to second the motion.
I gotta go home.
So what's the date? The 4th?
It would be December 4th. It'd be the
If you
first
want to
public
fourth the
hearing.
motion, you have to wait for somebody to do the third the motion.
I was out of line. I was out of third. I'll third it.
You want to fourth it?
4th. May the 4th be with us. If there's no further discussion, all in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Abstentions? Perfect. We'll see the public on December 4th to discuss this at the first public hearing. Thank you very much.
Of this year, we've had previous public hearings.
Yes, of this, for this year. All right. I am gonna ask Joseph to take us into the site plan review part, but I would like to preface that we're not deep diving into all of site plan review tonight. There's just a couple statutory things, if you will, to help Joseph's job moving forward.
And the good news is we can adopt these at any time.
Because
Yay.
they're state, because they're site plan review.
Yes.
So
They
you
don't,
guys
these
would
don't have
hold
to
a
go to,
hearing.
we have to have a hearing, but we can adopt it without a vote of the public.
So you also don't have to make the changes on any particular time frame. So if these take a little longer than, is allowed under zoning amendment timeframes, that's perfectly fine because the board can hold a public hearing on these at any time.
So here's a proposal. We could move these to our February meeting, at which point all of our zoning amendments will have been finalized. If you don't want to, if you want to be able to focus on zoning amendments between now and January, when we have to be done with hearings, we could have this be on the agenda in February when we can't have zoning hearings anymore. That's up to you.
Is there a statutory timeline, though, that we have to adhere to?
I think one of these,
For these
about
or-
the number of years already went into effect, right?
What's that? Yeah, effectively, it's already in effect.
Yeah.
So if we get a site plan between now and February, we're gonna have to observe this anyway, like we,
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay.
But not all of them. Some of them are,
The number of years for
right.
whatever.
yeah, for vesting.
Vesting.
I'll make a little, just to sort of give a little bit of backstory. So HB 413 made some changes to the state statute under RSA 67439, which dealt with vesting of planning board approved plans. So I have included the bill in your packet, but the big picture change there is when a plan is approved, the applicant has 3 years to begin active and substantial development on it, and that's to begin active and substantial development. They don't have to finish, but they do have to start active development. And that is defined, active and substantial development, by the site plan regs, though the board may choose at the time of approval to define it differently from what's in the regs. But anyway, generally you can think of it as kind of site work beginning, as beginning active and substantial.
Can I bring up a point of relevance? This came up recently with the school. Like when they came to us with the site plan,
Oh,
and
yeah.
they had not begun active and substantial development, and we decided to extend it. So that's kind of the situation we're talking about.
Yeah, exactly. That's a good parallel or a good example of it, because under this statutory change, approved projects, currently our site plan review regulations in alignment with state law say, as long as you begin active and substantial within 2 years, your project is vested against changes in zoning or site plan regulations for a period of 5 years. And that essentially means as long as you finish in 5 years, your project is subject to the regulations that were approved at the time, that were in place at the time it was approved. You can't come back and retroactively, or not retroactively, but change the zoning to make it no longer permitted.
And then revoke a permit.
And then revoke a site plan approval. Essentially.
Yeah.
Unless,
We've also done with one of these recently.
Yes,
Yeah.
with
With the storage
with the storage
facility where
unit.
we granted an extension, although, so under this, technically, we couldn't have denied them, right?
agreed.
okay.
With the new legal guidance, I agree with that. I've been in kind of close contact with New Hampshire Municipal Association's legal team about that. And while it's a little bit unclear, because our site plan review regulations do differ slightly from the state law, where ours say your plan expires if you don't begin active and substantial within 2 years. It doesn't actually say that you are not vested, but the sense from New Hampshire Municipal, the legal guidance I've received is that we really can't give people less than 3 years to begin active and substantial development and comply with this new law.
And if I recall correctly, a few years ago, we also actually defined what we mean by active and substantial.
We did.
Because previously, like the school, for example,
Right.
they can we just take a brush hog and that's like development? And the answer was no.
Exactly. No, that was a big point of discussion
Yeah.
under the site plan regulations of revisions of a few years ago. So
Brush hog.
essentially now, basically that has to be, if you start within 3 years, if you get a site plan approval and you start that development within 3 years, you're protected against any changes in local regulations for 7. Subject to, of course, the board can still say you have to meet your conditions within a year, because that's kind of a totally separate issue. And I also did get clarification on that from Municipal Association. It doesn't impact putting timelines on conditions, but it does on beginning active and substantial. So as I was cracking open the site plan regs, I did just want to bring up a few other points to the board's attention that deal with procedural and administrative matters that we run into from time to time that may merit some consideration. So the first being scope of review, which I won't get into too in-depth here, but clarifying what these regulations apply to in terms of development is kind of one of the most fundamental parts of these regulations. And in my experience answering questions from developers, they find these scope of review standards at times to be a bit unclear. So especially with respect to change of use. So if a change of use, as written in section 3A, any change in the use or the expansion of an existing use of a site or structure requires site plan review, except when the changes of uses from one permitted use to another permitted use within the same zoning district. I think the intention may have been within the same use category. The reason we added that exemption was so that you would have a building that was approved as an office, and if, retail was permitted in that district, you could switch it to retail to office without having to go through site plan review. But if you were to convert it to, say, industrial or residential uses, which are in different categories, I'm not sure that was the intention, and I do want to get clarification on that, because if the intention is any other permitted use versus any other permitted use in that same use category, I think we probably want to consider, if we're revising these anyway, to clarify what we mean by that.
I like that revision.
I think it makes it more clear for developers too, because often they seek guidance on whether they need to go through site plan review, and this can make it a little bit unclear. And then the other thing, number 4, a site plan review is required when you're changing the use or expanding an existing site or structure, except when, part number 4, there are no significant changes as determined by planning and development staff in the, did that not really, in the grading, landscaping, or exterior lighting. So if you're changing those 3 things significantly, you have to go through site plan review. If you're not changing those, the implication is you don't. But there are a lot of things that we require you to go, that are looked at under site plan review that are not those. And in fact, we expressly contemplate that in letter B and C, especially C, where we say that if you have a previously approved site plan that significantly changes as determined by planning and development staff, grading or required landscaping, change or add stormwater management system, change the location of parking lots, parking facilities, or parking areas, and or building facade signage or lighting, you have to come back for site plan review. So if you already have a site plan review and you're significantly changing any of those things, you have to come back. But if you have a pre-existing site that you're changing the use of, and you change, the only things that are under that list are exterior lighting, landscaping, and grading. So it's strange that the list of pieces that you can significantly change in a building with no site plan compared to a building with a site plan that needs to be amended, to me it seems as though those, you want to consider if those should be the same, and if not, what are the things that, if someone is significantly changing, should mean that they have to come back for site plan review. And I think
It seems like there was good intent that wasn't clearly communicated.
I think that's right. I think
Right.
that's right.
How do we deal with projects that don't have an existing site plan and it's a change of use? What's our trigger for requiring site plan?
It is this A 1 through 4.
Yeah.
So if they change the
Okay,
use,
I don't
if
have
you
it in
don't,
front of me, sorry.
no, it's fine. If the change of use is from one permitted use to another permitted use in the same district, you're exempt.
Okay.
So I should say,
But if it's a change of use that's not currently permitted under site plan, you have to file a new one.
essentially, so a change of use for an existing site or structure requires it, except when, it's the same, to another permitted use, the gross floor area is unchanged, no increase in parking requirements, no significant changes to grading, landscaping, or lighting, and those are the things that exempt you. And the intention was to exempt certain commercial small changes, and then there's another one which says new construction, physical expansions or new construction of non-residential or multifamily buildings that enlarge the total building footprint by more than 1,000 square feet or 1% of the lot area. So that's the other. You can expand a use by under 1,000 square feet or 1% of the lot area if it's like a commercial use, and that's fine. But if you have that expansion and you also significantly change grading, then under letter A, you still have to go through site plan review. So it's kind of like a funnel that people go through to see whether or not they apply. But a couple of those requirements seem inconsistent, especially with the difference between what triggers a site plan amendment requiring a new site plan review application and what requires a new site plan under a new like
Thank you.
an existing building with no site
Someone
plan
needs to.
on file.
I do think, from my recollection, these types of definitions are often the subject of litigation, because somebody is gonna come in and say, they're just gonna start operating a business, and they're gonna get a cease and desist because it's a change of use, and they're gonna make the case that, no, this is basically the same use that was there. So like, I think, you know, from a town perspective, enforcement, select board, I think it's important for us to really focus on these definitions and make sure it's clear what our expectations are, that, you know, so that when there is a change of use, it's clear to the owner of the new business that, like, it's not a grandfather, it's not a continuation of existing use, it's a new use, and it's no longer grandfathered, and you're required to comply with all the current site plan and zoning,
Okay.
all that stuff.
Over
It's
here.
allergy season.
Yeah, it is.
Want a
I'm with
cough
you.
drop?
So I will just go to the next one too. That's sort of number one of other things that struck me when looking at the necessary changes that we may want to consider. But that one is not legally mandated. That would be an administrative, procedural thing that the board, I think,
We could do.
could think about. But there's not a legal imperative to do that.
Right.
The other one is notices under V, section 5, which relates back to a discussion we had probably about a year ago about what should the board do when an application is provided and then not accepted as complete. And we talked about amending the site plan regulations to address that clearly, and we didn't get around to that at the time, but you know, the zoning board in that time has dealt with this issue, and they added something to their bylaws to deal with this. And I just threw something into this packet, which is roughly similar to what the zoning board added to their bylaws. By no means is this the only way that the board could deal with this. There's a lot of ways you can deal with incomplete applications.
Is the issue that, like, we in theory, we could say you can amend this application within 90 days with no, under the existing fees that were submitted, right?
Exactly. That's
But
exactly
the
it.
issue is, like, if we deny it, technically they have to reapply and pay the new fees again, right? And I think it's in our interest to give them some flexibility to say, you've got 30, 60, 90 days to amend your application and return it to us under the fee structure, right?
Yeah, because with Three Lakes, I think we had sort of this, because I think the gentleman's having issues with engineering
Yep.
and timelines, maybe a vacation in there somewhere.
Property owners are
Or to request.
Yeah, property own, yeah.
So I mean, the issue is that, like, if once we accept, we have a deadline under which, you know, we're compliant. Like usually the applicant can waive deadlines if we're working with them, but like if somebody wants to be a jerk and say, hey, you know, I submitted this application, you've got to give me an answer.
Yeah.
Then you can say, we deny it.
What
It's
happened
not
to
complete.
the February discussion of these issues?
So
All right, sorry.
No.
I thought that we could. I thought that we
Agreed,
could
though.
find an application incomplete, and they wouldn't have to. They could resubmit
Yeah.
without an extra fee
If it's
well,
waived.
so the
if
board,
it's waived.
By the
So-
select-
But what if we're waiting for like
but
a
there-
year
but
before
there's
they
still a
finally
time
finish
frame.
it?
They have a time.
there's basically three ways that this can be handled. The first way is that the board denies it and says, or declines to accept it and says, this is in effect a denial without prejudice for lack of information. You need to resubmit a whole new application,
And fees.
pay the fees. The board could say, we've got your application, it's incomplete, come back to us within 90, 180 days and give us this information and we will consider it again. The question that's come up when the board has gone that route is, at what point in that reconsideration do we need to hold a new public hearing renoticing of butters? Because that is typically at the applicant's expense. So should we require the applicant to pay for a new public hearing at that future meeting? Because we noticed the first hearing. We wouldn't notice that second hearing unless, you know, there was some other reason to, but
You
typically.
can't expect in the butter to just
Keep track of
be
it.
waiting forever
Yeah.
and paying attention that long.
And we can't require them to,
Yeah.
really, unless the board specifically asks them to, or unless it's in the regs. And then the other thing that the board could do, like you said, is deny it without prejudice, and then ask if the select board would waive the fees, which we've had essentially all three of these happen under, different applications, and none of them are necessarily illegal or wrong. It might be nice to have some guidance in the regulations. This is our standard way of handling it, to give applicants and the board some guidance to work off from. So what I put in there just as food for thought, definitely, just kind of based on the zoning board example, but just a starting point is determine what, an application is. If the board determines that an application is not complete, the board shall determine what information would be needed for the application to be accepted as complete. The board may decline to accept the application at that time and shall provide written notice to the applicant of this decision, which is the law, including as findings of fact the list of items that would be necessary for the application to be considered complete. So this gives two options, this paragraph. It says, any resubmittal after such notice is given shall be considered a new application. Alternatively, at its discretion, the board may postpone the decision on acceptance to a future meeting, but in no case more than 180 days from the board's initial review of the application for completeness. If the board elects to postpone this decision in this manner, the applicant shall be required to provide any additional information at least 21 days prior to the meeting at where the acceptance decision will be taken up, and a new public hearing shall be noticed for that date. The applicant shall be responsible for cost of notice as outlined in section 5E of the regulations.
Seems good
I
to
like
me.
that.
Yeah.
Yep, some clarity.
One way of handling it. I think that's kind of what the zoning board seemed to think was a good, it's not that exact language, but conceptually, that's what the zoning board seemed to like. So
Do you like it?
I think it's clear. I think it gives the board, myself, and applicants clarity at this is exactly what happens if the board says your application isn't complete.
Perfect. I know there's a lot, you have direct discussions with the applicants a lot of times. And if we can continue to improve these where your conversations can be more fluid with them, I can only imagine that can help you, so.
Yeah, I like to be able to give people an easy answer. There sometimes are not easy answers when it comes to zoning or site plan, but as much as I can, I like to be able to give them a clear answer. And then the only other piece is Article 6, post-approval procedures, which changes the vesting timeline to 7 years, provided you begin active and substantial in 3 years.
And that's by statute.
That is the statutory change. And then the last one, which is also not a statutory change, but something to think about, which ties to another statute, but isn't related to a specific RSA change. So right now, the regulations say, at the option of the board, a compliance hearing shall be required for the applicant to return to the board for determination if all aspects of the approved site plan have been completed as shown. The applicant shall provide an as-built site plan to the board with certification of the accuracy of the site plan by a licensed land surveyor or registered professional engineer. So this is saying the board may hold a compliance hearing to determine if the project has been built as per the plan, which is a legitimate use of compliance hearings. However, under state law, actually, certain conditions which are not administrative but require substantive review to determine if they're complete, the board really has to decide whether those are complete at a compliance hearing as well.
Which we've used.
Which we've used because it's the law. The RSA 6764 1I, which I cite on the side, says that's essentially required that boards can do that. But our regulations really just say you would use a compliance hearing to determine if they've built the project as per the plan, which of course the board can also do, but there's not a specific mention of, like with Mountain Village, what happens, stating the fact that the board can say, you must meet this condition and then come back to us for a compliance hearing for us to review if it's complete, especially when there's a lot of substantive judgment. It's not just something I can look at and say, you did it, you didn't do it. It's something where the board says something like, provide an adequate walkway from the parking area to the school facility, right? I can say you provide a walkway, but when we start using things like adequate or being more subjective interpretation conditions, those really are best to come back to the board for a compliance hearing to determine if that's met. So that's just another one to think about, food for thought. And, you know, not, again, no change in law has dictated that we must do this right now, but I also thought just I'd mention these other pieces while we're opening these up. The only ones we have to do by law are the changes to the vesting. You have 3 years to begin, and then you're vested for 7 years. But
Even that one, if we don't do it, it's in effect anyway.
We basically have to treat it like it's in effect anyway, right?
that's true. But these others, I just thought they would be good for, you know, the board to kind of chew over and decide if, you know, we want to look at a couple of these other procedural questions at some point when we're looking at the site plan regs, or,
It seems to me like they all make sense. The only one that needs some discussion to hone them down would be that checklist for.
Yeah.
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 I think that one is key.
In number 3, scope of review.
Yeah.
Is this something that if we wanted to vote on this tonight, we could just vote on it?
No, we need a
tonight?
public hearing,
We need a public hearing. Thank you.
but it doesn't have to be scheduled with town meeting or anything.
Yeah.
Thanks, Joseph.
Thank you.
Big moon tonight.
Big move tonight.
I'd like to go see it.
Site plan
We'll
review
be out there all
regulations, I
night.
think we'll continue and maybe in 2026, pick away at a little more.
Yep.
Make sure we're keeping those up to snuff. All right.
We'll have to start thinking about timelines for declaring candidacy soon.
Yes, and my intention is to get some guidance from Amy, the town clerk, to all of you about what to expect, and perhaps she'll be willing to even come to a meeting and answer any questions in case
nice, yeah.
anybody is unfamiliar with that process. But yes, it's a good point. That is something that the board will need to consider. Of course, we have a number of different terms which will be up for election at the upcoming election in March, and those will be for a number of different term lengths. Off the top of my head, I believe we have 2 terms that are 3 years, 2 terms that are 2 years, and 1 term that is 1 year up for election.
Really?
Yep.
Everyone except for Matt.
Year term with-
So,
I would have to check that.
Well, it might be me.
I don't know. Well, the select,
You mean-
the select board ex officio, I have not counted in that.
No,
list.
the position I was in last
Oh,
year.
yes,
It
that
might
could
be
be.
the position that
Yeah.
Neil's in now.
I would have
That'll
to check
get
that.
all positions on the correct cycle.
Yeah.
That would, and then
Moving
every year
forward.
thereafter, it would only be 2 people for 2 3-year terms,
Unless someone leaves.
unless there's a vacancy.
Right.
Yep.
Like, if somebody's 2 years into or a year and a half into their term and they leave, the select board, or actually, once this board is fully elected by the town, this board will have the ability to appoint appoint someone to fill an interim vacancy.
And
So,
As well as alternates.
Alternates
Yeah,
as well, yeah, but
yeah.
until,
Oh, wow.
until March of 2027, the select board will continue to appoint
Yes.
alternates,
Yeah.
until every member of this
Right.
board is elected.
so how many seats this year are going to be, like, how many people? I know.
5.
5
So
of
Five?
this whole
6.
board could get flipped?
Except for
there's-
Matt and a select board rep.
Yes, the select board rep is
Wow.
determined by the select board every
Right.
year. They get to decide whoever that is, and yes.
But that's just kind of because it's a first year.
You have to run.
Reset everything.
You'd have to run, and
I'd
you,
have to
well, you
run.
wouldn't, you'd have to run.
Yeah.
What about me?
You'd have to run.
You can walk.
I want to run.
Sir Michael would have to run, but you,
We
Yeah.
all have to
Oh, yeah,
run.
Mike.
Yep.
Michael
Not
Bushwhacker.
him.
Yeah.
Sue, do you have to run?
Yeah?
I would have to,
Yeah.
yeah.
The only thing is that alternate positions aren't impacted by this until
Until
they
there's a board.
expire and there's a new board, right?
Oh, right.
So it depends on.
Unless you want to be a member.
You could run, or you could
Run.
you could
Gonna
stay an
be,
alternate.
How do I fit in here? I move?
There'll be 1-year term, 2-year term, 3-year term.
Yeah, it would be a mix of 2 3s, 2 2s, and a 1.
When you file your candidacy,
This time.
you're going to have to pick what seat
This
you're
time.
filing
Right, which
for.
one you want.
So you're going to say, I'm going to run for
The 2-year
a
term.
3-year term, or I'm going to run for a 2-year term. So like,
Has
that been clarified?
if you get 6 people who file for the 3-year terms and
Yeah.
nobody who files for the 2-year terms,
Yeah.
you could have a write-in could easily win a 2-year
But
term.
we
wow.
were waiting for guidance from Amy on this, if I remember correctly. Or have
don't-
we gotten it?
I don't have any,
On the filing?
I don't have any
I think,
clarification.
I don't think there's a lot of flexibility in how that
Yes,
works.
there are,
Okay.
but it's just,
I think they have to define the
for
position.
specific
There
seats for the planning
are
board.
2 seats for a 3-year term, and there might be 3 candidates, and the 2 highest vote getters will get the 2 seats.
you just want to.
Whereas like somebody might run for a 2-year term
You're okay for it.
unopposed.
No, I
And-
assume
and
that's
it's basically
probably how
shut
it
on
will
the
work,
planning
but there
board
was some
about
question about it.
Yeah, agreed, and I think that is
First
how it
term
worked
was
for
in
some other
1976.
boards too, that have had this situation. This is just a bump of that first year because of how
Things were different
all of the
back then.
terms align at this particular moment.
That long ago.
Because some folks on the board are technically
1976.
serving interim, filling other terms for their duration, so there's some.
Molly is
Yeah, if
done.
Amy could come join us,
So, sorry.
discuss campaign funding. Just kidding, let's not get off on a tangent
Right.
tonight.
I'm gonna bring the war chest.
Yeah, exactly. Any other unfinished business, board members, planning staff? Any other comments?
Nothing on my end.
It was a good meeting.
Bob, thank you very much for your attendance and your input.
Are we gonna have
Thank you.
time to get our?
Yeah.
I do have a question about the rest of our zoning amendments, and are we gonna have time to get them, have 2 hearings before February 2nd? So we should kind of revisit those and make sure we vote to get them to public hearing, because if our first one is gonna be December 4th, and our second one is gonna be January 22nd, there's not a lot of room for other dates. I mean, we could have them interim, but we need to decide if we're gonna do that or if we're only gonna do them at our working meetings.
Well, we have a couple of firsts already at,
We do.
later this month.
So we have the
The next
20th,
meeting
we
we
have the
have
3
some.
hearings, and then we'll have 1 hearing on the 4th. So we'll,
What is left out at this point? Anything
what is
that
left?
we were considering?
as-
Are there any pending,
Well, unless, I mean, the only thing that is of recent
Short-term.
interest is the short-term rental question.
Everything else.
Which we does already move to a public hearing as well. No, we did
No,
not.
no, we're
No,
still-
we did not.
we're
That was
discuss that.
the Fairgrounds Road, yeah.
So we have, so
Yeah,
currently
yeah.
on.
No, it's late. And some of us were in a previous meeting as well.
can we make it an agenda item at the next meeting to review the proposed short-term rental language, so that if we need to get it on the meeting agenda?
I think it'd be
the hearing
worthwhile
agenda, we can do
to
that.
address it while it's
think
still
we
fresh
plan-
in our
I
minds.
think we planned,
Yeah,
that's what I had in my head was that,
okay.
because after that,
It's
we
late,
have
and-
December
and
4th.
If we're gonna do it this year, we gotta do it.
Yeah. Plus, do we have application?
We have an application for
One.
the 20th. Yep, a
Okay.
site plan review.
All right.
All right,
Good
excellent.
meeting.
Thank you very much, everyone.
I'll make a motion to adjourn.
Second.
Well, sorry, did we? Sorry.
4th, 3rd.
Did we do public
All in
comment?
favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed?
I don't know.
Aye.
Abstentions? Thank you very much, everyone. Have a wonderful
That is today.
No opposed on that, it was unanimous.